of go as we go. But I'm trying a live, and I'm live. I was using my hold screen. I don't know if it actually worked, but I was trying something different. Hey guys, it's me, Adam. Welcome to Thursday. Yeah, it's Thursday night, 7 p.m. PST, Pacific Standard Time. That is, what time is it over there, Kevin? 7?
12-hour difference. 7 morning.
But that's 7 a.m.
7 a.m.
So he's got his coffee ready to go, and yeah, we're gonna have a good conversation. Yeah, this is RC Drift Talk. We are going to cover same things as we usually do, calendar events, and then I'm actually gonna go through the topics to begin with in whatever order, and then we'll kind of dive into it. So, calendar events, we've got Oregon STC. If you don't already know the dates, you know the dates. Or go find the dates. It's the first week of October. If you haven't registered, go registered, because that is important for your crowd and your, like, wherever you're going. February 22nd, that is what next, not this Saturday, but the Saturday after, is the Twisted RC Fund the Future event is what it's called. Oh, one update on that, it's a $20 track fee, not a $10 track fee. My bad. I was saying $10 last time. They are doing like different little mini events, like a car show and show and shine and little miniature small little competitions. The 21st, let me rewind a day. Is that officially the last day at PDX?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So February 21st is the last Friday. Is it going to be a drift to midnight?
Yeah.
Okay. So the last drift to midnight, and basically the last day over at PDX Underground RC.
Yep. The next Saturday, we're taking up all the tile and moving it to the new place.
What's interesting is that they're trying to come up with a little bit of, they're brainstorming what they want to do with the, like, that side, because there's, yeah, they still have that side. I saw Oval, yeah. I saw On-Road, Tamiya On-Road.
Yeah. So
I don't think it's big enough for On-Road.
Originally, there's a couple deals in place for that space to be rented out by another tenant, but Kevin's actually still on the lease there, and the deal was that if those went through, then he could basically get out of his lease earlier. But so far, but as far as I know, 2 of those deals have fallen through. So the space will continue to be rented by Kevin, but we are just going to go ahead and move forward with the new spot since we've already signed a lease there. So Kevin's going to be looking for something else to do with that space. I voted oval track. I think oval track on carpet with a drift car class would be pretty fun.
It is fun. I can let you know that. That's for sure. Just make sure you put rubber tires on.
Or not.
See, no, actually do that. It's fun. Northwest guys will know what I'm talking about. It is fun. I heard one of the prospects was like a dance studio.
Yeah, that was originally, or the second one, I think. But that one, as far as we know, that's not gonna happen.
So
not now.
My joke is I bet that the owner of that dance studio showed up to the track, right? They walked through the door and they saw the buggies and they saw the drift track, right? Depending on what time, is probably more buggies than anything else. And what I think happened is the instant that a buggy slammed into the wall, they're like, I'm out.
Yeah, maybe.
Because the racing track is still going to be there. And whatever new track is going to be there, well, I mean, the buggies would have been there the whole entire time.
Yeah.
was like, they bounced. No, we can't do this.
Maybe.
To Import Expo, March 8th, Portland Convention Center, Northwest Model Hobby and Expo, Model Hobby Expo, April 11th to the 13th. We're starting to look at Airbnbs, so that'll be fun. That does it for the calendar events. DJ, what you want to give us a heads up of what you're working on this stream?
I mean, I'm kind of just touching up some like random little things on a new project that I have right now, which will be a long-term project. I've got a golem in my hands right now, so it's a pretty bone stock, and yeah, gonna be getting that up and going. So I'm working on just mounting a body to it.
Very cool.
Basically since Worlds, only 2 of our team members have not bought a golem yet. We're holding strong still, but everyone else is full overdose life now.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's kind of
DJ, in fairness to DJ, he won the slippers at Worlds, so he kind of had to build a car.
It's like I'm entitled now, so
you're entitled.
I
You
could
have
have
the
a lot of
slippers.
Finals, though.
You have the slippers, thus you must buy a golem. That's Elliot saying do a kickflip, DJ.
do a kickflip.
Do a
We're gonna do
kickflip.
it. Let's see.
Anyway, oh, there he goes.
First try.
Who do we have in chat? We have a whole bunch of people in chat, you guys.
The
Jose,
usual.
Kevin, Miko's in there, RC Hectorius, Chuck's in here,
RJ,
David Chen.
Gly.
Actually,
Austin.
that was Elliot that called that out.
Mike.
Shout out to Elliot. 'Cause
Shout out to Elliot.
bushings that
Joey's
you
in
gave me,
here.
I put those in. Those are nice.
And yeah, y'all are awesome. All right, you guys. We've got Kevin here with RCO, and we got Adam back on the show. So the funny thing that we were talking at Adam, do we need to call you Dr. H, or are we good just with Adam?
Man, I mean, you guys can call me either. I know Logan has taken up the mantle of calling me Dr. H, so Adam works. I'd be more used to Adam.
Yeah, chat. You tell us, Dr. H or something else.
Yeah,
This is what happened though, because we kind of met on the podcast the last time he was on, and like I can't. There's 2 of you named Adam. We got to differentiate somehow.
I totally makes sense. You know?
Good call. Good call.
I mean, even at Worlds, right? I was sitting right across the table from Adam, so that was interesting too.
Yeah.
So 2 for Dr. H. I need to see more Dr. H. Need to see more suggestion, you guys. Okay, today is gonna be a cool show. We've got some interesting topics that we're gonna bring back for these guys because it's gonna be fun. Just for hints or just a preview, we're gonna talk about cheap car challenge. So budget cars basically. We're gonna talk about a lot about Kaiju. We're gonna talk about G-Buster Knuckles. We're gonna do a little bit of shop talk. And guess what we're bringing back? We're bringing back Burn Tunes. We're gonna talk about Burn Tunes.
Oh, here we go. First of all, like, there's obviously a curious pairing of guests that we have here. Is there anything that you guys would like to announce regarding that?
Which one? The burn tunes?
Yeah.
Just the fact that we have you paired with Adam today.
Oh, well, I mean, obviously, Adam is one of our newest drivers, newest members of RCO. We had talked about way back at STC, and Adam's a very good fit, good ambassador for the sport, and we're so happy to have him on board.
Yeah, sick. Obviously, I think you nailed it on the head there with that one. It's a good pick, and you couldn't be more correct on that. He's definitely a great ambassador for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I just like to give a shout out to Chris. I'm telling you, I promise I'm not stealing all your teammates.
Oh boy. Hey chat. This one's gonna come specifically to you guys. This one is from Kevin. The question is, what's the go-to 2025 competition? Do you want competition body or do you just want body? in general?
We do either. Yeah. What's the hot take this year? And then I guess I think there are like 5 or 6 that I last counted. Now GR86 shells. I think there's a new one from Shibata that just came out, or just got released.
Yep. Like
So,
how many 8.6s can you count? Okay, let's do competition. Okay. Competition body, hot competition body. Start typing in. Jeremy's E30.
No, not Jeremy's E30. Oh my god.
The square bumper, dude. Craziness.
I mean, does it still have the RER body or RER under it?
No, the fun story on that one was when we got into RCDC last year. Obviously, RCDC has a set of pre-approved bodies that you're allowed to use during the event, and so we went through and we managed to source one of the old school Yokomo BMW FD shells. We got that all ready up and whatnot, and then when he showed up to RCDC, he pulls out his E30. I'm like, what is that? He's like, it got approved, and I'm like, oh my god. He loves that shell. Absolutely loves that shell.
It's the most boxy shell ever. Like out of that competition, probably. Maybe. I don't know.
There's to be said there is a advantage to the shell depending on where the driver. So like RCDC, because you're on an elevated stand, not so much. But if you were drifting on the ground, that shell is very difficult to drift or chase behind because it'll block your line of sight.
Oh, okay.
I kind of I didn't choose the GR Corolla specifically for this reason. I've always liked them, but we've noticed that like if I drive with any of the 86s, it's a little bit harder for them to see their car.
Just because it's so tall, right?
Yeah, very tall.
It doesn't
Which I need
take
all
a
the
lot
help I can
to-
get. So
Oh, somebody just mentioned Robin's stock. No, Robin's not running a stock GT86 anymore. He has a wide body GT86 painted in the same orange color as all his other cars.
I was talking to Robin at finals about it, and he's like, you see everybody has liveries on their body. Everybody, it's hard to tell them apart. But he's like, I'm the only guy who runs a stock body, so I'm unique. I'm like, Robin, that is like the smartest thing. He's by not being different, he is very different.
That's great.
No, I'll see if I can find a photo. At RCDC, he showed up with a same color, but he actually has a wide body and a wing. So it's a huge departure for him. It's kind of, I joke with him because when I first met Robin, he carried around a BlackBerry. And I said, one of these days you're going to get rid of it.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Hey,
shout out to Vittorio tuning in from Japan.
Oh. Ooh. Vittorio, he's over in Japan. That's right.
Jelly.
Yeah.
I cannot wait to get back to Japan.
There's a comment in the Discord chat, Kevin, because he posted his body. Mm-hmm. He was like, he drove it, so Kevin doesn't want my body anymore. I don't know if it's you or if it's a different Kevin.
What did he say?
Let me find it.
In the Discord.
Yeah, in the Discord.
I'm on the Discord. Why is Discord's not updating?
Yeah, so Vittorio says, already drove it hard, so Kevin doesn't want it anymore. I don't know if it's
not
you.
True. Not true. I will happily add it to the collection. It'll look nice at the new shop.
Yeah, so you sent pictures. Is the pictures of the new shop?
Yeah, that's the new shop.
Okay. So we'll go over those
Victorio,
later.
that just means that it's discounted now because it's used.
Okay,
hopefully Vito's enjoying a strong yellow right now.
Ooh.
Cheers, by the way.
On my way to get an egg sandwich.
Oh, he's headed to Lawson's or 7-Eleven, one of the two.
Do we need to have that discussion again? Lawson's or 7-Eleven? I think there was one other in the mix, but...
Dude, Family Mart. Family Mart chicken. Yeah.
I would just say
Family
they're
Mart.
all equally good, and whichever is accessible, that's great.
It's so much better than the States, I bet. Any of them.
It's a different philosophy.
It's a philosophy. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, like 7-Eleven, like when you think 7-Eleven in the States, you think like petrol store or like petrol or gas station. And then overseas, you think more of it like in the U.S. terms, it'd be like a family, like a Walmart family store kind of thing.
Gotcha. Okay, let's kick things off because you two have already been on the stream, so I don't think we need to reintroduce ya. Oh wow, rewind. The funny thing is, I totally broke like mental capacity for a while now. The funny thing is that the last time that Dr. H was on the stream, it was in the same exact place that he is right now.
My parents' house in Southern California, so let's go. They just know where I am.
Let's hit things off with cheap car challenge. Or wait, no. Let's talk about the important stuff. Let's talk about Kaiju. I'm sorry, Kevin. We're gonna go there.
You're go straight into it.
Well, I have my list, and I didn't order them. They're just here. So let me find some pictures, and I will share them. But Kevin, go ahead and give us a rundown of what Kaiju is and what the whole idea behind it.
Sure. So I'll start with what everybody's probably tuning in for. Kaiju is coming. We're expecting probably like a late February, early March kind of release. So thanks to everybody for the patience. We're just waiting on a couple of aluminum pieces to get anodized. But Kaiju is our second chassis conversion, and it actually, I guess the fun story where it began was actually with Chris, because Chris was like, hey, I want a deck for an overdose or a glom. And so at SDC last year, he handed me his chassis and said, take it with you. And
Oh, we lost Kevin.
Oh no.
start developing. So we started down the road about looking at on side. Am I back?
Yeah.
Hello?
There you are.
Yeah,
Are
you're
we
back.
there? Oh, yeah. So the story goes, we were with Chris, and he asked me to look in developing a chassis for the glom. So at that time, it was a Kansai. And as we started going through the process, we realized the complications. And so it was just like, hey, well, why don't we try doing basically like a Lego bin for the RC car world? And that's what spurred the idea of building this multi-chassis, multi-platform combination. So Kaiju basically is our second chassis, and then allows us to bring everything from Kansai over, but at the same time allows you to mix and match front ends and rear ends, and has basically like a universal set that will allow you to couple things together within certain limitations. Like the MST MRX unfortunately doesn't fit because of the motor placement, but like a GRK does. So yes.
How does that work if you buy a Kaiju? Do you have to kind of select when you're ordering it or when you're purchasing it? Is it you just buying one thing and it can work with all these things, or do you have to select specific kind of parts for what you want to build?
So the front and the back pieces are specific to certain chassis. And I say certain chassis because like the YD2 front, that'll cover your RDX, your YD2, your Shark, or like the Glom front, for instance. We already built in the DDS attachment points. So you can run a Glom triple wiper, slide rack, or like a DDSS setup on it. So how to put this, when you purchase it, basically through the web configurator, the car configurator that we're building, you basically select what your setup is or what you're trying to build. So you could say like my base is an RDX, and it'll give you all three pieces. So basically there's a front, middle, back. But if you select a custom and you say, I'm going to run an MST gearbox with a GRK front, it would give you the right parts to combine and put together.
Good to know. So once you buy the initial set, and keep it simple, you just buy the full RDX set, and then down the road, if you want to switch to a different front end, it's just the same. All you got to do is go on somewhere, some store, and pick a front end piece that you want to try out, and you can do that.
Correct.
Cool.
Yeah, it's to open up not only just for those curious and tuning with kind of like the real world stuff. I'm sure there's quite a few like me who have just multiple chassis laying around, and it's just something fun to Frankenstein stuff.
I mean that's kind of why, that's part of the cleverness of the idea is like, one, kind of the meta lately has been to mix and match stuff anyways. So two, like you're just making it that a little easier. But then two, like you said, everyone has some weird parts laying around or some part of a chassis here, part of a chassis there. So that gives them a reason to buy into it as well.
It does, and I mean, I guess the key part too is it still retains all the focus and competition aspects of Kansai. So that was one of the key parts, is that when we made the new chassis, it wasn't just a novelty item. We were in Thailand, I think it was just before TDC last year, and we were doing kind of like the last round of testing for it. And I clearly remember it was we had like the Thai kids, and then Luck, and then Jay was with us. And there was at one point we were drifting, and through the day we had like everybody was running Kansai, and then I was running Kaiju. And at some point when I was pushing on Luck, there was like 2 laps, and then he stopped driving, and he walked behind me, and he was like, "I'm switching." And I was like, "All right, done. We've got validation."
So essentially, like, if you're kind of just sticking with one platform, it's, you know, all the benefits you would expect from like a Kansai conversion, but then it also opens up the opportunity to switch the front of the rear.
It evolves too, because like one of the big pieces because Kansai came out first, and then after Kansai we addressed a stiffness / flex issue with the Ishii battery holder. But the problem is that system kind of locks you into an RDX. So Kaiju fixes that problem, gives us even more tuning in terms of flex. And I guess that's a good topic to get into a little bit. But that we introduced different things, like the battery holder on Kansai is actually a floating piece. Like we took a lot of inspiration, did a lot of chatting with some of the legends in the sport. And then like one of the things that everybody said was like, get everything off the lower deck. Like if as much as you can, remove everything off the lower deck. So it's like, okay, we'll figure out how to do that. And then people are like, well, we need to find a way to like stiffen the lower deck. So we want it to be able to attach. So like that floating battery can be linked to the lower. It can be left floating. It can be, the battery can be positioned up, front, back, left, right, whichever would. So we solved a lot of like requests that came through Kansai we just built it into the design for Kaiju.
Would the battery, like, well, having that much or that many things on the lower chassis, it affects, well, clearly it affects flex that much, but I'm curious, is there any other benefit other than just allowing the lower deck to flex? Like center of gravity.
Part about the lower. Well, center of gravity obviously is the I guess the primary purpose why we made the battery shift movable. Because it will literally, like, you can move it to an LTS setup, like without buying anything else. Like the base Kaiju, you can position the battery in the lower position, like what you see in the picture. You can actually move that battery directly above where it is, that battery holder, through the what we call our little T-block that allows you to move that battery also front and back quite a bit. You could actually position the battery like up middle if you so choose.
Okay.
But flex is an interesting one because we kind of, I'm not going to say we were the first, we were one of the original like RDX chassis. And when flex came out, you know, it was kind of applying an idea that was, I guess, at the tail end of like the YD2, like the ZX and the SX3, those. And we noticed in testing, flex has certain things that would apply to somebody like that's brand new to the hobby, and then it's a different configuration for those that would want competition. But at the same time, we realized, and I'm probably going to hurt a lot of people with this statement, looking at you, Kalai, we all love the MC1, but the MC1, those that have driven the MC1 and driven the RDX, I would say most probably agree the RDX performed better than the MC1. And part of that we've kind of like debunked a little bit is that there is a little bit of flex, especially when you start getting more towards the more, I guess, the newer style of driving, this really high angle, almost like backy kind of style. The flex helps in terms of being able to catch. The downside of flex in any chassis is that you reduce the response on your front end. The steering becomes a little bit numb. But then that's where you go into many other things that can increase the speed or the sensitivity or the response on the front end. So it's a balance piece. It's like you introduce this one component, and if you can balance it with something else, the net gain is a lot higher. And so the RDX was interesting because the flex in the RDX, because they built the battery holder as part of the structural foundation, the flex is actually kind of either you call it split or the flex is moved forward, versus like a YD2 that's like a cross load because it's between the gearbox and the front bulkhead. So it's actually twisting across the whole chassis. And when we did the Kansai test, we tested both. We were one of the first that actually built an upper deck that connected the front bulkhead to the battery holder as opposed to side rails. And then, you know, when we gave it to different people, it was clear which suited what. So when we gave it to Nara's wife, for instance, she was a beginning drifter at that time. She liked the wet noodle configuration because it was so easy to catch the car. Like the car would not poke its tail out. And so at that level, it gave her the confidence to kind of like push and build the fundamentals on. And as she got better, we just started to slowly stiffen the chassis up. And then as from the other side, those that were in the competitive world, they were like, no, we want the rear end stiff. We ran it in the stiffest setup. And then that's what ended up leading us to Ishii, which is people were like, we want a little bit even more stiff on the back end. And it's like, okay, well, we'll just build the battery holder out of aluminum, and that'll solve that.
I think more than anything about these days, it's just about giving as many options to the driver as you can, right?
Yeah, I don't think there's anything. I mean, I guess there's two trains of thought. You'll have those that want something. Okay, you have the iPhone and the Android user. You have the iPhone, which is everybody wants something that's a known ecosystem. It just works straight out of the box, blah, blah, blah. We take the factory settings from the team and whatnot, and we apply that. And then you have this other side, which is I want infinite adjustability and customization. We apply to both. If you want to run an RDX in its complete base chassis, Kaiju will do that. If you want to do a Glom GRK combination, it'll do that too.
So going back to Flex for just a second here, like, is there any quantifiable way to measure Flex?
Yeah, I mean, if you really wanted, so basically, if you took a chassis, and this is where you also check how flex points work. If you took a chassis and just like laid it flat on the table, for instance, and say choose the midpoint. So if you put the chassis on the table and you let the back half of the chassis, off, and then basically if you put a strain gauge on the back of that, you could technically measure the flex or the twist in the chassis. You just have to build an attachment piece for your measuring device. We'd kind of do it by hand, but we are kind of take a more practical approach. So our original prototypes just had like an infinite amount, and we just started testing. So, set the most flex wet noodle setting, and then we'll drive it for like 30 laps. And then we'll just flip-flop in between, and we'll start jumping back and forth like a optician test.
Gotcha.
Oh, there you go. There's my crazy wild card project.
Ooh.
That, by the way, works really well now that they fixed the base, that adjustable piece.
What are we looking at there? What is that?
It's the wiper, the overdose wiper.
Okay.
Yeah. So Chris, when he handed me his car, had the triple wiper on it, and it was set so far back, I had to run like the Rev D long ball studs with like 5 millimeters of spacer behind it just to get the arms forward enough to get the Ackerman and everything. And so it was kind of cool to see when Overdose came out with that base that basically lets you move the whole unit forward. I was like, oh, okay, now we're within a working window. And when we tested it, I'm gonna go on a limb. It might be my favorite bell crank system. I'm still a DDS aficionado. That's my go-to favorite. But this was good. Like it has, in terms of the bell crank itself, like zero play. Once you get it in and shimmed up properly, like that thing is like rock solid.
Evan, I have a small complaint. It's right here. But what is this? It's too long of a screw. Sorry.
Is it? Oh, maybe.
Yeah.
maybe.
We're already roasting rigs out here.
Well, Kevin's saying maybe, so there could also be like some side project there too. I wouldn't be surprised. But I'll still
I mean,
take
at the
it
end
as
of the day, titanium only comes in so many lengths, right?
I mean, the other side is good.
So
It could just be a.
are we able to talk about pricing potentially, like the ballpark?
Kaiju, we don't have pricing yet.
Okay.
Basically, we got to get all the pieces in and then inventory, and then. But I can tell you this: what we've got. So Kaiju will be comprised of a front, so whatever steering system you're using on the front, the back, whatever gearbox, and then the middle bridge system is universal. Kaiju will also be offered in a no screw, stainless steel screw, and titanium screw option. So again, giving benefit to those that are coming from the builder tinker aspect. You guys probably already have boxes and boxes of screws, so we wanted to be able to fit the different models of types of drifters. So yeah, it'll have color options, screw options, and then of course whatever configuration you want.
I'm stoked. So I'm pretty sure I'll be getting one. Yeah. You just gotta let me know though. Like,
Pretty exciting.
Yeah, it'll.
Now, speaking about that though, because where will you're not gonna be shipping from out of the States, right? You'll be importing to the States as far as that goes. Talked about this with you the other day, just kind of a short chat. But as far as just like distribution channels of getting things like this into the States, with the whole Trump and election crap going on, do you think you'll have any issues with it?
I think we won't, and I think that's specifically because we are based and we operate out of Dubai. And as far as I know, the UAE and the US are still on good standings.
Cool.
unless somebody makes some play with oil. So I don't think we'll have that issue. Again, we'll have to see how this all plays out. I know I've heard of, as of now, since we last talked, some people like RC Mart orders, things that are coming over from China and whatnot. Those seem to have like a bit of delay, but I haven't heard of anybody saying that it was more costly or they ran into like any customs or stuff. I think the tariffs are going to affect more at like kind of the dealer distribution level as
Sure.
opposed to the single item.
Mm-hmm.
Then again, so you could argue that's how like Temu and them were trying to get around this. They were basically trying to do it as kind of like a one-off, one-piece sale, as opposed to like a company bringing in a ton of items, that kind of thing.
Sure. Hey, Adam, Dr. H,
What up?
what is your kaiju combo?
So, actually, my car right here. So, right now, I'm running a DDSS in the front.
Okay.
And then I'm running an SD2 transmission in 3-gear configuration in the rear. So, my Kaiju is going to be same as my Kansai here. It's just going to, obviously you can see fewer side rails, things where you have like the one uniform spine. It's going to actually, keep more of the weight in the center. So if you want, you can kind of tune it for the roll because there's not really that weight out wide. So honestly, I think it's what every tinkerer dreams of, where you can kind of get anything that you want out of the car. You can tune it to be what you want and get as much chassis stiffness or flex as you want. And honestly, it's one of the things where when I was joining the team, it was something I've been so excited about. Where it is that, as Kevin says, like that Lego box where I can create whatever car that I want to satisfy whatever need that I have.
Mm-hmm. I love this concept, and it's funny because if you were to ask me the same idea about like just specific chassis, like Sakura D6, right? It has so many different transmission options available to it, but it seems like it's trying too hard to be too many things at the same time, instead of just being good at the thing that it's supposed to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have a D6, but like it just seems like it's trying too hard to be too many things. Whereas this, to me, this is you're pulling like all the good pieces from each chassis into one, right?
You're on the right point. So like when people like the early description that we had for Kaiju is like a best hits kind of anthem. But like you said specifically, and I got a lot of flack from some of my Japanese counterparts, like trying to do it all onto one chassis, because that was one of the original designs, was like put all the chassis, or put all the configurations onto one chassis, and you ended up with a lower deck that was like Swiss cheese.
Yeah, just not
And
possible.
so-
Really.
Addiction already has one of those, so
Holes everywhere.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, there's like making that center bridge section and allowing like the adjustable wheelbase and that kind of stuff, like trying to do that with some sense of form, and then also not to interfere with the actual like base chassis. That's why we opted to try to make it just that center block, and it's as small as possible. That will allow us to do that kind of wheelbase adjustment. And just for people that don't know, it doesn't do a micro. This is literally your standard wheelbase plus or minus 10 millimeters back and forth. So it's not designed to make an M chassis, but it is designed to allow you to like get your wheels, if you want, to fit into your shell without having to retune the whole car.
That's exactly what we
Well, what's interesting too is Mako-chan in RCDC. I saw him driving around, and I was like, he has like the GR86 is already small, and his looked extra small.
Mhm.
And I was like, so I went over to him and I was just like, what kind of shell is this? Like, looks like your shell is like really cool. And then he's like, he showed me, he took a Yokomo GR86 and he cut the shell down 10 millimeters and he shrunk it. And the reason he was able to do that, because he runs an SD2, which already has, an RD2, which runs the gearbox back, and then he was able to move the gearbox forward. And so he was able to make the chassis 10 mil. I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I was like, why? And it was basically, he just wanted the extra agility and the extra rotation that comes from running a shorter wheelbase. And I was like, that's cool. And I don't know if a lot of people even realize that he was running like micro. And of course, on certain tracks, if you're being judged bumper to the wall, having that short of a chassis, pretty significant advantage.
Mm-hmm.
absolutely.
Did he also change the toe block position?
I believe no. I think the toe block position stayed the same. It just the rather than the RDX gearbox being here, it moved forward,
Mm-hmm.
and then that ended up moving. I think he moved the lower control arms forward, and then just shrunk the actual wheelbase of the car, and then they cut the shell to match.
Gotcha. There's a comment in here for questioning 274 millimeters. You said plus or minus 10, right?
Yep.
So 267.
Sure. I think, was it 267? 268 is the base?
Would be the longest. 274 is the Corvette body, right? The C8 Corvette? Something like that. And then there's
Well,
like a
if it's
long
the
chaser.
If it's the Addiction C8 body, it fits it perfectly, because that's the purple Sanwa one that I run.
There we
Uses
go.
that. I think if it, I mean, I have to go what the base dimension is.
I think there's two of those
Fire up.
C8s now. There's like a long one and a shorter one too.
No, I think you're thinking of the A90 because they made like the regular one. No, you're not thinking that.
No, because I was gonna buy the short one.
Gotcha. Oh, there are two Addiction C8s. There you go.
Hmm.
What about you, DJ? What is your Kaiju combo?
Shoot, that's a rough one because I only have really driven two chassis. Well, I guess three chassis platforms. So I'd probably just have to combine one of those two together. I'd probably have to go with the RDX rear end and RMX front end, which is just weird as heck.
It's not that weird.
I'm surprised you didn't say RMX front and rear. So that's something.
What about you, Logan?
I think I would just go with what Adam did, like SD2, SD3, and Shark DDSS.
I think I'm on Chris's boat. DDSS front, and a Golem rear end. I think that's where it'll be for me. I already have it together.
I think the interesting outcome from this experiment, as we start collecting different builds, I'm curious if like a certain rear end starts becoming more popular, and then likewise a certain front end. I think front end will probably be a little bit more all over the place because people have their particular setups and which they like. But what we've learned with Kansai on the rear end, there are certain gearboxes that fit for a particular reason. So example, I would say like the RDX gearbox at the back. Again, other than the fact that unless you want aluminum, in which case, yeah, you could technically do like an MC1 or like an SD2. But like one of the things that we did or we noticed with the RDX gearbox, the bolt pattern is so short. So the Kaiju RDX allows us, we actually drilled 2 different bolt patterns. So you can effectively do the RD2 rear position, basically meaning that your CV joints are more angled forward, gives a camming effect to the front, to the wheels. And if you know how to tune that, it's actually a pretty interesting driving characteristic. Basically, as you get to the higher RPMs, basically it forces the car to squat.
And that's literally all because of the angle of the CVDs to the transmission, right?
Yeah.
Like it's
Shibata
self-aligning
did it by raising up the gearbox, and then basically because there's such an extreme angle, it causes like a camming effect. So this came about. I'll ask the question to everyone: which is faster, a smooth spinning wheel, or like a oblong or like a out of balance wheel?
Constant traction would say that the balanced and smooth wheel would be faster.
Yeah, I'm going with the oblong one for sure.
You know, I'll take it from mountain bikes where there are actual chain rings that are
no, don't go there.
they're oblong. I'm sorry, they're oblong. So I'm gonna go with what Kevin's saying here, because what the idea is that it emphasizes more of that downstroke, so you can get more of the power down.
So
yeah, that's like 2 different applications, I would say.
But is it because if you have an oblong wheel in that application of squat, that's what it is, right?
Yeah, I just think the advantage you get from that one spot heating up a little more is better.
But Adam's philosophy is right. Logan's moving on the right direction. So
Okay.
basically what it is, if you think of like so like the key part, and this is the biggest piece, is the fact that we don't run inflatable rear wheels like a drift car, like a 1-to-1 scale.
Yeah.
Right. We have hard
non-pneumatic
plastic
tires.
Right. And so like on a real car, you would use as much contact patch as possible, and therefore, you would maximize that. On our cars, if you kind of notice, like I know you guys have gone into detail, there's normally a crown or a ridge. So if you have like a flat profile tile, something like a buzz brake, right? You tend to run a stupid amount of camber, and you basically ice skate on that edge. Versus if you're running something like a LF3, which has the crown in the middle, you'll run less camber, and it's designed, and that little edge, that little point there, that provides slightly, some will say significant, more grip than if you were to run flat. And so like the oblong idea is kind of like the same thing. When it drives, basically it's like a drum beat on the ground, and that little skipping action gives you a little bit more traction advantage, versus if it was completely flat and it just spins, right? Once the moment you break it, you break the traction, it spins, you have to slow the wheel back down to regain that traction, versus where if it's just, intervals on the ground, it will slowly, you have a bigger window of it like breaking that traction, so to speak. What you realize is that when you have them, the CVs at a higher angle, it doesn't really affect the low brushing. So that doesn't change. So like when you're throwing the car to the wall and you're kind of brushing, you're holding against the wall, that all feels similar because you're normally in like the 10 to say 30% throttle range. But the moment you get into boost and you start building higher RPMs, into like the say 20,000 and above RPMs, you can audibly hear the tire makes a different sound.
Yeah.
and the car starts to behave like it just it hunkers down and it starts to move forward at a slightly faster rate. So this is something interesting.
I was talking about that sound last week, or one of these weeks, where I was talking about it more in relation to burn tunes, because the same effect that you'll get is if you are running a quote unquote burn tune, is those oblong, the higher spots on the tire will be the spot that melts. But I was like, you can pick up on that because you can hear it. You can hear it's like a very distinct noise when a wheel is very obviously not perfectly cylindrical, like at high RPM. And just that those things take off.
Indeed. So, long story short, I think we will find people and the community kind of gravitating and seeing which gearboxes and which front ends tend to become more popular. And I think that's something that we wouldn't see without something like a Kaiju chassis in existence, because we're all kind of like locked into our specific brands or the which components are compatible to one another. Like, I'm really curious to see how the GRK feels. I've got my personal thoughts and validations on that, but we need more testing
for sure. So out of this tire talk, out of this wheel talk,
tangents, here we go.
Balancing wheels, because if we're saying that the
sounds
oblong,
like don't worry about it.
Yeah, if we're saying that the oblong tire doesn't, or is more effective in that sense, balancing tires, balance the front.
Okay, so the answer to that question that I asked is actually two-part, because you want your front wheels being as balanced and smooth spinning as possible.
Yeah.
Because there's no drag on it.
Yeah.
So that has to roll. So if it was
resistance.
oblong, correct. It adds a bit of resistance or a bit of friction or a sticky spot. Your rear wheels, however, I guess I'll in a practical sense, most of my rear wheels now, I use a softer wheel, and none of those are balanced. Those things are as wonky as possible.
And there's weird, like the way the spokes are designed in those, if you get the really soft ones and you spin them up really fast, they'll just like deform just from the RPM.
Correct. But with that said, there is a significant felt difference between a equal weight stiff rear wheel versus an equal weight flex rear wheel. Like the side grip changes. So there's obviously, a pro and a con. How much it being balanced versus it being soft and be able to be malleable. I choose the soft.
Yeah.
Well, and how much can your car take, right? Because if there's too much imbalance and too much noise coming from your wheels, that's certainly going to affect your gyro performance.
Like any, that's true. But like any, I would say like any parameter that we can tune and mess with, there's a window.
Yep.
Right.
Yeah.
Tolerance.
Definitely. And then there's, I guess, a really fun way to look at like RC tuning is something that just kind of like pieced together last year. It's like 3D chess. And like you said, everything, I think people focus on like certain factors. Like when we say like ESC setting, like they want this setting, this setting, this setting, this setting. And what people don't realize, like there's a window that you want to keep that ESC in. There's a window that you want to keep like your roll center on the back of the car, how much your car is leaning, depending on your rear configuration. And it's all about getting those windows to align and then to give you the bigger overall net window to operate in. And we'll get more into that a little bit when we start talking about like burn tunes and stuff, because that actually goes the other direction in some ways.
It's just with everything, there's a balance, and changing one setting is gonna change what you need in another setting, and you can't like it's our brains are like wanting to be like, just change one thing at a time and test it, and that's probably what you should do. But like you change one setting on your front end, and that's gonna change what's gonna work best for the other settings in your front end, right? Like it's all like it's all intertwined. Everything you do has an effect on other stuff.
Okay, I'm gonna throw a little side tangent out here. Adam, Logan, Adam. Okay, so like when we talk about certain things like rear active toe, something that has like a variable component that's now changing something within its range. Do you guys prefer, or do you, I guess, entertain that, or are you more of the, I like to keep it simple and everything moves uniformly?
As long as I understand it, right? Because if I don't understand what's happening at that point, like when it's squatting, either on like either toe in or toe out, right? Then I would prefer simple. If I understand it, then I'm all about it, right?
That's I'm a big dumb idiot, so I like to eliminate as many possible, like as many parameters, as many questions as possible. So keep it simple because I'm more likely to get to, the potential for me being dumb is easier to reach the max potential with as fewer things to adjust as possible versus adding things, and it's like you never get anywhere good with that. So yeah, keep it simple for sure.
What about you?
Logan and I share a similar tuning kind of thought process in that it's eliminating dynamic systems. So the reason that my car is 3-gear is because I've effectively divorced the idea of camber gain on squat and throttle. So my camber is, if you can actually see it, you can see right here throughout the entirety of my camber, it is uniform. So there's a uniform wear. So that's something that I actually look for, because what it means is that my car on throttle, I can pull as much throttle as I want. It's not changing the actual grip point. It's not changing the how much of the tire is actually on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I've tuned with suspension, with camber gain, via the angle of the length of the arm, the CVD, and but that's just my thought process is to eliminate as many variables as possible so that I have more uniformity throughout, say, my throttle pull or my wheel, my steering, anything.
So consistency is key.
Exactly. That's my thought process, at least.
Which this will be interesting getting into burn tunes then, like specifically.
Yeah. Oh yeah. No, I've seen it.
I guess, do we want to go there right now, or do we want to go talk about G-Buster Knuckles?
No, we go creep into burn tunes. We'll break it up a little bit.
Okay. Let me swap the screen here.
Before we do that, when Kaiju is ready to go, where will people be able to find that?
Mm-hmm.
Right initially, it'll be off of our website. So we actually have the landing page up and running now. So rcoasis.com. So that's where all the initial, I think, batch 1 and even batch 2. So we're going to start working with our dealers and our distribution networks as soon as we have them ready for release. It's just the model for the network, for the dealer network, is going to be a little bit different because, either we offer it as like a complete kit, which is probably what we'll do for the dealer network, and then later releasing it as a single piece. But right off of the website's actually designed to allow you to do the configuration. So perhaps maybe those that are looking for like a complete setup, the dealer network it'll be readily accessible to them. But if you're like, I want to do, DC 10 RMX combination, then head over to the website and they'll take care of that.
It's a complicated product with a lot of things that can change. So it's a lot easier for you to build that configurator on your website so that people can get that. But then, expecting your dealers to be able to handle that is a little challenging, right? Yeah.
Kaiju taught us a lot on the manufacturing side, not only when we started introducing like a new material, but like the number of parts. Like we didn't think about that when it came time to like package and distribute it. Like Kanzai was like a lower deck, 2 side decks, 4, I guess, if there's 2 pieces, and then the standoffs. And then like Kaiju is like times 10 the number of parts to make an actual chassis. And it was just like, spreadsheets and the number of nights I've lost counting screws, and I'll tell you.
Coming soon, 1 day, 9 hours, 39 minutes, and 38 minutes and 59 seconds.
Yeah,
Ooh.
we're not gonna. The one day might just be like the landing, the official page. I don't know if the configurator will be ready by one day. But when we get into the G Buster, yeah, the G Busters will be one of the first things that's available out on the site.
Okay, let's pull that up here.
Yeah, because I've seen G Busters in the wild for a while now.
Wait, where have you seen them?
Justin has like a old prototype set. I don't know how old it is, but
Justin has a ground zero prototype.
Man, I didn't look at his chassis last time. Dang it. He was at PDX last week.
yes.
Anyway.
G Buster, I think it was May last year when we did the RCO meet in Arizona.
Mhm.
That's when we first brought the G Busters kind of like outside of just like internal testing, and we ran it there, played with it there, learned some things. Went for a second revision. That revision then took place in the Philippines, and then after that we made more revisions, and then that's how we finally got to our production piece. But they've been thoroughly tested. We've kind of run them out in the public and into the competition scenes just to see where they measure, and yeah, they fared pretty well. Some of the design concepts that we like, so like the big one is the displaced caster setting. And what we noticed on a lot of the other setups, you have to move one of the upper or the lower ball joints to get that setting, which basically means that you have to then retune the front end. So we wanted to make that setting isolated. We wanted to be able to move the wheel bearing axis independently of where your upper and lower ball joints are. So that way you didn't have to actually like retune, which helped us during testing because we were able just to move that back and forth and feel the difference, as opposed to moving a ball joint and then having to retune, and then then there's a variable. Did I retune it properly, or did the setting change? So we were able to actually see very quickly like the difference. And in layman's terms, as you start adding displaced caster or trailing angle, as what the more popular term,
Okay.
basically what you feel is an improved grip and response. But there's a limit, like anything, back and forth. So an example, like on a wide front, narrow rear car, a little bit helps and it starts to dial in it. So an example is those that are on a DDSS setup, you're probably very used to a very high response, high grip front end. It just reacts faster than, say, like a standard RDX. By moving the trailing arm, I think in its like first or second setting, you gain that feel onto the RDX. That was pretty, eye-opening for us, because I don't like the RDX front end base stock. I mean, it takes a lot of work to get the RDX front end to feel as good as like a DDSS, in my opinion. And then you take it to the opposite end, like Nemzi, he runs one of these RWB Porsche bodies, so he's got like a massive wide rear end.
Mm-hmm.
And so he uses the entire range of that trailing angle to give more response on the front to try to balance out that wide end, because he just won't give up.
It's basically it's effectively raising your caster angle without actually changing the caster on the arms themselves, just at the knuckle.
Yeah, I'll send a
obviously different
link.
because it's directly on the knuckle, but
There's I can't remember which YouTube channel. They went into a very good explanation of it, because this ties into what they call mechanical trail.
Mhm.
And so there's two parts, but effectively what it means that as the wheel, if you measure the camber of the wheel, like on the blue car, that's my main comp car. If you were to measure that camber at full lock, at 90, and then at full lock the other direction, I think it's like -9, -10, and then +10. So the sweep stays very uniform throughout, and that's what you kind of gain with that. Versus like, say, like I think it was an RD2 that I measured, like a stock RD2, like it was like 9 and then 10, but then when you went the other way, it dropped significantly. So it's something that it's just an option that people can play with. There are those that are that want just no trailing angle, and then there's those that will want to explore with it. Same thing with KPI. This is, I think it's like an ongoing, never-ending discussion. Like, do you want KPI? Do you want how much KPI? And I think a lot of it depends on your region, your style, the judges, that kind of thing.
So is the kind of the primary feature of these knuckles is that you can move that bearing axis forward and back, basically?
That's one of the primary features. Adam, can you pull up I don't know if it's going to show on screen, the technical,
Oh,
the PDF?
I can. Yeah, hold on.
So we actually made we just finished our technical data sheet on it. So it explains the whole concepts of what G-Buster's capable do. So the trailing angle is one. The other one is we made a flip chip for the KPI. So the KPI can be, I think it's 0. Effectively, when you just round it up, it's like 0, 2, 4, 6 degrees of KPI without having to buy a separate piece or be limited to 2 options. So you can base AGI to whatever you want, the trailing angle. So it's got all the settings, and we tried to make it a slightly heavier, not too heavy, but heavier. There you go. That's
Hold on. Let me. There we go.
Whoa.
This is the most detailed thing I've ever seen on Knuckles, Kevin.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I love that.
Yeah, this is like I swear I like read this 4 times over. It was like the greatest moment of like actually learning what the knuckle does, because I see like I have the Yokomo like adjustable KPI knuckles, and they don't include anything about anything.
Yeah, that's the issue with
like,
so many of the Japanese market stuff is just like us here are just left to guess and figure out what everything does.
Exactly. Yeah, this is beautiful.
I think the hardest part about making Knuckles was because of what it is, there's an expected performance. And so if you just design a knuckle and you throw it out there and it doesn't perform, then it's just kind of just dead in the water. That was part of the reason for it took so long to test this, to make sure that, so like the YD2 and the RDX variants, the reason why we have 2 variants is because we couldn't figure out a universal placement for the stopper and the ball stud, the steering ball, where it would give me the same lead angle on both chassis. So the RDX obviously being a much shorter roll center on the front, it has a slightly different setup. But I think it's between like half a degree or 1 degree difference between the two of them. So we got it to like 85.5 and like 86 degrees of open, which is one of the requirements that came out of like our Thai guys. The kiddos wanted this insane cutting angle just so that they can guide the car backwards. And it was like, okay. And then it's trying to find out the correct placements with the different setups. So, across the different front ends. But it was fun. I mean, it's a good learning process. And then a little ambitious with the design because most CNC shops don't like making parts that small.
Yeah, I was going to say, you're asking a lot of the manufacturing.
Yeah. But we got it done. So we're super excited. The first set, that picture that I posted on the Instagram, the first batch, probably the first 1 or 2 batches, basically we're just doing all the assembly on it and just making sure the QC is, hands down 110%. And as soon as we become more comfortable with it, we'll release it in an unassembled form. But yeah, we'll see. The first test is coming up. Huh?
Oh, sorry. I just wanted to talk about one of like Alfredo has a question in chat about lightweight versus heavier knuckles.
Ooh.
So in my experience, in the past 2 months, I've tried RevD ASL knuckles, RevD SG knuckles, Yokomo adjustable KPI knuckles, and these are all very different in terms of weight. And what I was noticing is so when I think about it, it's like when we're thinking of a lever in a mechanical sense, it's like adding weight. So I just have like this brick charger here. The further I move it out, the more that this weight plays an effect in how fast I can get this back to center, basically back to mechanical neutral. Whereas if I take like my AirPods case here, it's easier for me to keep it here. It's easier for me to keep it out than for me to keep my big brick. So it's effectively like the weight at the end of the lever has an effect on how fast you can get that self-centering force and how much mechanical preference the system has for wanting to pull straight again. So for example, like my SG knuckles, which weighed maybe half as much as the knuckles that I'm running right now, were hanging at angle a lot longer than these knuckles are. So, and that's just my personal experience, and that's with me aligning the car the same way. So this is with the same caster, the same camber. I try to make everything as uniform as possible, but that was my experience in terms of heavier versus lighter knuckles.
It's a good way of looking at it. I'll say I look at it as track dependent. So if you have a silky smooth track, like it's flat, dead flat, there's less of an effect. But when you have a track that has undulations, or like RCDC that has like that little extra weight on the outside, because that's the side that's wobbling up and down, right? It tracks the ground better. And so I guess the other tale about it is that it adds a little bit of weight outboard, so therefore it adds a little bit more, I guess, grounding effect on that wheel. But yeah, I guess response to Alfredo, front I like heavy, rear dependent. It just I don't think it has as much of effect in terms of how fast your servo can center that wheel, because your servo is, again, it's 110 scale. Like if we were to take the servo, what is like 15, 20 kilograms, whatever the rating, and you multiply it by 10, like it has infinitely more power to move that wheel than a human would in a real car.
Yeah.
So I don't think that matters as much as opposed to what's actually happening dynamically out on the wheel itself.
Plus, in some sense, like for a servo, there's such thing as too light, where it struggles to, where a servo and gyro struggle to keep the keep the wheel in a neutral, consistent position. Like if you have low caster, you're gonna fight with a little vibration and stuff.
Correct.
Just because you don't have any resistance on the servo. It's kind of like if you're lifting a 20-pound weight with your arm, and then you drop the weight, and you're gonna punch yourself in the face if you try to lift. You need to have some kind of feedback force to push against, basically.
Dow is asking, how do you feel about the Hecotech VIA knuckles? He's asking Kevin and high class Adam.
I've not seen them. I think, who was it? Trey. I think Trey showed me them at SDC, but I've not had any firsthand experience with them. I think this current direction of where RC is, or drift is going to start opening up a lot of new and inventive options, not just our knuckles, the Herotech, as well as the new 80 team knuckles. I think we're moving towards that realm where the communities are a bit more mature and they're willing to kind of explore. I think things like, I can explain that one. When I first got my YD2 SX3, those are designed right out of the box with trailing angle. And at the beginning, I had no idea what it was, whatnot, set it up straight, out of the box setup, and it was like, okay, this is good. And then somebody was like, oh no, these knuckles are kind of weird because it's got this trailing angle, and you should have and then I switched over to, I think it was the Rev D, the MT1, the SG ones, I think. And all of a sudden it was like, oh, this feels so much better. But that was because of the lack of knowledge. That was a lack of understanding of how that was supposed to work, its relationship to caster, all those components.
Yeah.
And if I want to put a little side point, if I want to pin what the hot topic is for 2025 in the RC industry, Arrow. Just keep that in mind for later this year. Another podcast.
What was that? I didn't get that.
Arrow. He said arrow.
Okay.
Hold on.
Yeah, VIA ones are interesting because for me it's those are kind of designed around running zero caster, which is something that I kind of dabble with and is not very typical, that I hear from anyone that they're like low caster. Everyone tells me I'm stupid. So I was like, cool, I like this. This is just cool to see someone like Yeah, no, we're gonna try this and see what this is like. You know what I mean? I think, yeah, we're at the point in RC Drift where everyone's kind of starting to branch out and try very new things and stuff. It's cool.
So here, let me do something here. Evan mentioned Arrow. So let's show him Arrow.
Adam's like, we're not waiting, we're doing it now.
I mean, we're here, right? Like, and it's only one
that
picture.
air. I see.
No. Mike, back off. Not now, later.
I just
This
Oh
Arrow.
yeah, that one, that's one.
So
okay.
do some explaining, because you showed me this picture like a few weeks ago. I'm like, what are you doing? Tell me what this is.
Okay, so this stems. Okay, if we go back like a year ago, whatnot, you would probably have talked to me and heard like all my shells run wings, big wings, like park benches on the back. And the simple terminology there was it has like a stabilizing effect.
Mm-hmm.
And the best way to explain it, it's not about getting downforce in a straight line. It's like when you pitch the car sideways, you have this flat plane of an air brake kind of hanging out there, which then helps control the rear, which then makes it stable. The easy one for me was like a lot of the cars that had come out during that time, like a lot of the GR86 shells. Those cars would spin so fast, like the rotation rate was quick. And then you got something to like a GR Corolla, which was like, it kind of is almost built in because of the big flat body. So fast forward a couple of iterations, and then we get to, I guess, World TDC and Japan RCDC. So World TDC, we've been testing aero disc covers. And I will say, I'm not going to go into a lot of detail right now, but I will say there are two different types of aero disc covers. There's the flat and then there's a concave, and each have their own effective play into it. But in layman's terms, the flat one belongs on the front wheel, and it acts kind of like a rudder, in the sense that the moment that the wheel starts to turn, the air affecting on that wheel will help move the car. We tested this, and what we basically found out, like, you know, when you just drive the car straight and you just crank the wheel and it understeers and just pushes forward, it's very difficult to get the car to do that when you have an aero disc on the front, because that aero disc immediately starts with that initial move on the front, and then it lets the car start rolling that direction. The rear aero disc is a bit different. That is effectively like a physical drag brake. So if you think about the setting in your ESC, what you use drag brake for, this is a physical version of it. So when you pitch the car, again, at TDC, like if I took my Corvette and I would just throw and slide it, it will slide directly to 90 degrees, hold at 90, and everything is copacetic. When we put the aero disc cover on it, we realized it was actually difficult to get the car past 80 degrees. Like, to get it to 90, you really had to huck the thing. And so what you realize is that I've got a new tuning tool. I've got a new dimension. Mm-hmm. So hypothetically, I've got a competition that says 90 degree is the maximum allowed angle. Guess what I'm running?
I can't even guess.
Basically running an aero disc, because the aero disc will help keep the car from rotating past the 90 point. Mm-hmm. Because that cover is acting as a brake for, and that air is helping support. So similar to the picture that you see there, that is basically a buggy chassis brace or a touring car brace. Okay. And what it is designed to keep the side of the shells
rigid.
More rigid.
Okay.
Yeah. So when you think about our cars, when our cars swing and start moving, 70, 80, 90 degrees along, like after a throw, you have air hitting the side of your car. Now, if you're running something like we'll use the Corvette shell that we're talking about, that has a lot of like form in it already, it doesn't move much. It's pretty rigid. But this is on a R34 Skyline shell, Pandora. So that side is like paper thin, like it moves a lot. Mm-hmm. And so again, by putting that brace on there, once you put the car sideways, you feel more of a drag effect as the car is moving, as opposed to that air kind of like sliding under the car.
Yeah, because some of those bodies, especially ones that have, like you said, little features, can get real floppy.
So yeah, that's kind of the where I think it's an untapped area of the hobby is aero and how aero is used in the drift world, the drift scene. I guess another way to look at it, if you think about the one-to-one cars, so you go back to the early days when D1GP, all the cars had big, massive wings, right? That was the style and whatnot then. And then you kind of go where we are today, and like we don't see wings anymore. And so the question then becomes: was it all just for looks and for show, or have we figured something out? And as something evolved past that, and we're using something else to function as what that wing was giving us.
Right on, mechanical advantage. Like, so, I guess, like for rear aero discs, that makes sense to me. For front aero discs, we're spinning the tires. Like, is it more gyroscopic effect, or is it actually like the air being pulled or like through the aero disc that's helping?
No, so the front and the I guess the quantifiable state in the front is because the front, if you run a flat disc, that disc is allowing the air to act on the wheel and push onto the actual axle.
Okay.
Hence, it will help move the car. All right, I'm gonna sound like a conspiracy theory. Hand on heart, swear to God, something was felt. This is going to be as controversial as the capacitor thing from last year. So those in Japan or in the Asia side will know of a gentleman called Bagi-san. He's an OG, both in many aspects of RC. So he goes and takes so we're running the aero disc on the front, and then he goes and takes a piece of foil tape, just a strip, maybe one centimeter wide, and lays it across it. And the effect that I felt on the front baffled me. Not just me, there were a couple other people that felt it and drove it. There was a felt change. Now, why it changed, none of us can explain it. Bagi will tell me it's because of the static. Something to do with it spinning and the static electricity, and I don't know. All I know is like witchcraft, because the front end felt different. Why it felt different, don't know. He'll also tell you to do things like run foil tape across the bottom of the car, and then it's static and the grounding. There's a lot of different pieces. But all I can say is, in regards to like where the aero discs are, see, Victor is saying saying it. So all I can say is the aero discs do have an effect. It is a tuning tool, just like anything else, and it's up to you. Can you utilize that tool to your advantage?
Exactly that. Speaking of the static and foil tape, it reminds me of reading through Aki Vance's catalog page, like the photonic stabilizer and just all that stuff. It's like, okay, it sounds like witchcraft. So I mean, there must be some sort of truth to it.
Well, it's like the capacitor thing, and you have to remember, when we talk about like Accuvance as a company, their capacitors are going to be developed specifically for their product line. And I can tell you in two different scenarios: one, capacitors do make a difference. Two, there are two types of capacitors, or two general effects. You have like a low ESR, which is like a filtering capacitor, and then you have like a density capacitor, which is just designed to add, like, basically store power. And that's the reason why, like when some people will be like, oh, a capacitor only works if like you pull the battery and the car stays on for like a minute. No, not true. That has one aspect, and I can totally tell you, you put a pulse master on a car, it will change the PWM frequency and the way that the car feels. Just like if you take a trace vector and you stick it in your radio, it will also have that same effect, just you don't have the weight on the car. But like if you take like for me, like an Accuvance, like an XX, generally hits hard. Like it's a more raw ESC. And so, yeah, you can turn it up to 64 hertz, but by turning well, again, we're going to get more into it when we talk to berm tunes, but being able to filter it and give that filtered feeling without having to change your drive frequency has an advantage. But likewise too, if you take something like a V-Rev is a very soft, or even softer, it would be the the Hobby Wing, not the G3, the prior one, I think the D10. It's a very soft ESC. But if you go and you tack on something like the Racing, the G-Force, or the Oniseki ESC, you give it a little bit more oomph by providing that power there. So again, tuning tool, completely how you want your car to feel or behave. But I think it's safe to say it has an effect. Whether that effect helps you or not help you doesn't disregard the fact that it has an effect.
Yeah, there's 2 points I would make. The first point is the parent company of Accuvance, Keyence, is like the 5th largest corporation in Japan. So they know what they're talking about usually. And then second, I wish they would do like if they just showed like on some of their product pages like a line graph of what the signals look like with and without capacitors, it would be very obvious that there's an effect, right? I think that would do a lot of good for them.
That's too much science, Logan.
It's really not, though. Like, you can see a line is like super jumpy, and then you put a capacitor on and it's not. It's like pretty basic. I feel like that would just do a lot for them to convince people that they actually do something. Because I think that's their biggest marketing mountain they have to climb over, is that people just don't think it does anything, or they don't understand how it could possibly do anything.
I think we're beyond that point, though, right? Because if you buy an Accuvance setup, right, like there's basically, that you're going to be buying like the master cap almost indefinitely, right? Because they took all their other caps off the website. That's the only one that you can buy.
The Blaze?
Oh, really? It's only the Blaze and the
like the stock little the stock little single cap.
The stock one.
Unless they changed it again, who knows? But yeah, like the Chevalier, the Turbo, like all of those were removed the last time that I checked.
I just feel like if they could put it on some kind of paper graph of like before, after, make it super obvious that there is a difference, it would help. There you go.
I guess the reason why is, again, not an expert, just somebody who's done some thorough testing on it. Like, I've tried running a setup that's had 3 pulse masters and a Blaze and a vector trace and a vector, and I can 100% say there is such thing as having too much capacitance, because it changes the feel. Now, again, it just means that there was too much capacitance for me, or what I was searching for out of the car. But yeah, I think there is a reason why they exist, and I think there's if you can utilize it, it definitely gives you a little bit of an edge. And when you're talking about like competition, anything competition, like 0.5% edge is still an edge.
I still think,
for sure,
like as far as electronics go, if you do blind testing, like I doubt very many people are going to know exactly what electronic setup that they're driving.
I agree with that.
Like I think you could probably tell the difference between like an Agile and a Fledge, like as far as motors go, but as far as ESC to ESC, like maybe power differences, right? Like, because to me, RPX2 puts out most power, then like Hobby Wing, Accuvance, like kind of in that order to me. But yeah, it's blind taste test or driving test. I don't think very many people would be able to tell.
If you're talking about just the power component, I agree, because I think you can. It's a scale, it's a slider. You can move those to feel. When you start talking about feature sets,
yes,
that's where I think ESCs really start to showcase their strengths. It's actually one of the topics that we had floating around the RCO lounge. So like, if one of the interesting parts when we were in Japan, the RPX2, even though it's such an older model, it's still revered as one of the best ESCs, and that's primarily because of the braking page. Like the RPX2's ability to control and the fine tuning that you can do under braking, in my opinion, far outweighs what you can do in an Accuvance. The B-Rev has a lot of those functions and tools, but then the B-Rev also So for instance, like on the BREV, like on the boost page, for instance, you can't stop the boost. Like the boost is just set to build endlessly. But the BREV gives you the ability to control on-ramp and off-ramp of boost, which is unique to just about every other ESC. And that gives me another new tuning perspective, meaning that I can effectively, whatever I used to do in turbo, I can do it under boost. And then turbo becomes its own isolated function because it has its own separate on and off ramp. So that's why I guess another good part is, I think as we go through this year, I have it pretty on good accord that we're probably going to see some advancements in ESCs in the 2025 season.
Yeah.
There you go. You heard it here first.
I mean, I don't.
I'm the worst person to talk about ESCs and motors with, because I'm just like, yeah, motor spins when I pull the trigger, baby. Yeah.
Oh man. Okay. Let's.
Yeah, McLaren is one of the ones I'm curious. Like I haven't come across any of those products yet, but as we start to move around,
Yeah.
I think we'll have some units for I think Advan will have some units for us to play with when we're in Thailand.
We have a couple out here, and I think those guys are just kind of getting used to the tuning aspect of it all, because it's a little bit different. The thing I do really like about those, actually, and having just said I was the worst ESC person to talk with, but those do data logging, which to me is pretty interesting to be able to look at, compare like your throttle position to various other parameters that the motor might be recording. So being able to see what your throttle position is compared to what your timing is at, and stuff like that seems pretty cool. I think we're still figuring out how to sync that, because normally, like in real life, maybe on a drag strip or on a circuit track, on drag strip, obviously it would be very easy to see like what point in the run you're at. But on a real track, you'd have, with real data logging stuff, you'd have like the GPS track to follow, so you could see like what turn you're in when you're looking at the data. You can see exactly where you're at. But so there's still some of that to figure out, but it's really interesting to me.
Yeah, so I've used those functions, like when we talk about like RPX2 has it, definitely VREV. AccuVance doesn't have that function.
Mm-hmm. But
but the ones that use the apps, they generally do. But to answer your question, it's kind of like when we do audio stuff or like filming stuff, like right at the beginning of a film, you do the clap to sync everything.
Yeah, full throttle 3 times every lap or something.
Bingo. Yeah. Start line, or at this point, that's where I give it a good blaze, and then you can time it.
Yeah. But then that leads to like my craving is like, all right, okay, let's put
timing loop.
Let's hook up timing loop, wheel speed sensors, shock travel sensors, everything, dude.
On a little drift car.
Man, dude.
A little drift car. Like we'll be drag racing before we know it.
Well, I mean, I think what it is, it'll all filter down. It's just like how F1 technology eventually filters down and we get some benefit in the consumer market. Those that take the time and effort to harness all this data, and then later on down the line, somebody gives an optimized version, which is just kind of like a plug and play.
Yep.
It's like back to like the G-Buster knuckles, like when the unit that we tested in the Philippines and like the unit that Justin has, that actually has 2.5 millimeters worth of travel. And what we basically found out was like once you pass 2, it kind of like wasn't useful anymore. Like it was just way beyond outside the scale.
And so
then you're able to,
that's that thing, right? Where you're gonna go out there and build stuff that is just way beyond what anyone in the real world needs, and find out what actually works and trickle that down. Just be it through even just talking about it on a podcast, or selling the products and everything like that.
So when we start seeing aero wheels come out in 3 months, we know where it started.
I mean, technically, who was it? Was it Bubble Milk? That was like they were all running aero discs on the front, like the old HPI ones, Turbo Max.
I mean, visually they're just kind of fun, right? But I don't know. Maybe they kind of knew something about the effect of the driving on it.
Well, those
Usually they
HPI wheels were like super flexible, super like squishy.
Those are the ones that have the aero disc is that removable piece, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the first time we saw it, the first time I saw it was at STC 2 years ago, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go here. I don't know if this was the intention of that picture, but let's talk about it. Let's talk about burn tunes for a second.
Let's get burned.
Now,
Dr. Adam. Dr. H, you go first. You go first.
well,
Okay.
well, so that's the thing. I'm curious to hear what Dr. H is going to say versus what you have to say, Kevin, because I think it's two very different perspectives as far as tuning technique goes, right?
So this is just generalized burn tune kind of thing?
I think so.
Or- Okay.
Like
So
applied application is, I
I'm
think.
going to mention somebody who most of the people here have either driven with or they've seen or they've taken stuff. He's basically the progenitor of burn tune in the US. So Raymond from Las Vegas. Raymond's car is by far the fastest, highest angle, highest commitment car that I've ever seen driven, point blank period. And this is again coming from my experience as a US driver. I've seen a few tracks, I've been out of the state, but something that tells me that this is something unique is that when the Arizona guys came a couple weeks ago and they drove Raymond's car, they were like aghast. They had never driven anything like this, and these guys have been in the hobby for a few years now. So he combines the traditional aspects of what you'd consider a burn tune, so that's like lower FDR, higher wheel speed, with active tow, and like the most active tow that you have seen in a car, and high battery, so the car pitches. So you can put the car in the middle of a sweeper and just pull throttle, and the car will just go faster. There's no dip, there's no anything. You will hear, and this is the thing that Logan was talking about.
Yeah, you hear the noise.
Audible. Yeah, it'll just sag, and then it'll just gone. Yeah, and it's something where I've had some discussions with other guys. It's like, we all think that this car is incredible the way that it drives. It's like, so what do you want to glean from it? And so something that I actually took from that car was the idea that I wanted my car not to be super unstable if I pull full throttle mid-corner. And that's something that I actually implemented into my car. It's not necessarily a burn tune. I actually have a lower FDR, but I don't run a lot of timing. But it's like there's something to be gleaned from it. But ultimately, I think like the best example I can give of a burn tune that I've seen is Raymond's car. So I'm actually curious to see what Kevin sees from overseas as compared to that.
Hey, Kevin, you're up.
I'll ask the first question for Adam. What surface and what tire are you using?
So this is on VCT, so you're kind of run-of-the-mill American tile, and then DRCs.
Okay, so we'll start here. Burn tune, as it's been called, it's actually the side effect of something else. And burn tunes only work when you have certain tire and surface combinations. So I'll give you an example, like P-Tile and like a Rev D ASO1. It's near impossible to get a burn tune to work because it just doesn't get hot enough, versus something like an LF3, which is a bit more temperature sensitive. So going back to that first statement, the burn tune is a side effect of what I would call a high response tune, meaning that, as Adam so pointed out already, he runs a very low boost timing. He's running a very low FDR, and what you're getting out of this is that your ESC and your motor are having to do less to get the wheel speed out at the wheel. So by having the ESC basically breathe instead of huffing and puffing and trying to run hard, it's actually able to operate faster. So running a boost, say, so like give you some base settings, like on a 10.5 motor, my can timing will probably be around 25 to say 30. My boost will probably be somewhere between say 5 and 10. But my FDR is like 5.5 to 6. And that's how I get the wheel speed out. So the actual effect that I've tuned for is to make the motor do and make the ESC work as little as possible, as fast as possible to get the wheel speed. Basically, more response. You take it one step further and you look at some of the different throttle styles people have. Like my throttle is set just to be on the fingertip. So I operate in like the 0 to probably 30% is on the high end. And that's where I normally sit when I'm brushing the car or throwing the car. And it's a very, very light touch on the throttle. Some people that drive the car, they'll say it's too twitchy and whatnot. My response is my finger has to move less. My finger moving less is faster response. And then it's just a train thing. Then you look at the ESC. The ESC is set up for faster response. So then you start looking at like, well, what's the benefit? What's the side effect? Well, if all my brushing is done here at the very low end and my ESC is whatnot, what I've done is I've basically separated out the rest of my RPM range. So like, for instance, like to build like say third, fourth gear. So you have your brushing throttle. So first of all, everybody who's worried about like the straight line speed, right? Don't. Asia solves that rule because we have neutral zones. So the cars are allowed to basically take off at whatever timing they want, and then they're able to match up. In the United States, as SDC rules point out, the chase car can move whenever it wants to.
Mm-hmm.
So there should be no real reason that you have to focus so much on getting the car off the line, because those are set in the rules or in the track layouts to equalize. I don't think any competition or that I know of basically says we're going to start with a drag race, and then depending on how you do on that drag race, the rest of the run will be dictated. So there is some factor that mitigates. So because of that, I don't focus so much on how soft I can get my wheels to spin to get off the line. Yes, obviously you want it to move off the line, but that's not like one of like the big parameters. The big parameter for me is like when you chuck the car into the corner, and I get this is the way I kind of explain the Asian and the US styles. The US style, what I see is you'll see the angle open, and you'll see a lot of cars will push the car through the corner. And that is, it's a particular style and it's a way of doing it. In Asia, because of the different technical layout, that you can't push, because normally what happens, you'll end up with a section where you have to slide against the flat wall, and then there'll be a secondary angle change, meaning that if I input any throttle on that first throw, my car will move off the wall and I will miss the first and the second zone. So when I tune my ESCs, I really don't have to preempt the corner. Basically, I can throw the car in the corner, and as the car is sliding to that corner, I can figure out how much throttle I need to either move the car front or back. And that's where I think the ESC tuning is a little bit different from what I see when I talk to people from both sides of the coin. And it's not to say that one style is not present in the other side of the world. It's just what's your objective. So back to the burn tune, because I'm using a lower motor timing or can timing, and then a lower boost. Basically what I've done is I've taken that low end RPM and I've increased that resolution a lot, which means I don't have to hunt.
Oh, Red has was getting good.
Damn.
He's back.
Oh.
Reverse
What happened?
Reverse like 5 seconds. You're pointing.
Just about the resolution, the low throttle resolution.
So the combination of the low boost and the low FDR, basically what you're doing is you're focusing on that low RPM section, and you're increasing the resolution of that. Meaning that I don't have to go to a precise point in my throttle to find my brushing zone. My brushing zone is basically widened. So the effect is when I chuck the car to the corner, I'm not going, oh, how much throttle do I need to give it? I'm literally send, within reason, right? And I'm not sending it so it goes backwards too much, but send, and then as it's getting to the corner, I can literally lean on the throttle. If I needed to go further, I'm going to give it a little bit more throttle, a little bit more wheel spin, and the car is going to skate. It's going to extend and throw for me. I'm not pushing it into the corner. I'm literally just, braking traction. Likewise, if I'm approaching the wall too fast and I need to pull the car off the wall or stable the car, I'm going to slightly lessen the throttle. But because I've made that resolution bigger, I have a bigger operating window to work in. And then that's where we get into what we talked earlier about being able to split boost and turbo, because like switching the car, throwing the car under all corners minus the one on the big straight, that's under boost. I don't need turbo for that. And if you don't believe me, take your turbo, turn it off, and go drive your car. And I bet you can drive your car just fine.
No way. No.
The one where you need turbo for is when the car is at a higher RPM. So basically when you're on that straight and you need to flick the car on the straight, obviously you're already at a higher RPM. So your boost is already, running through its limit. So that's where the turbo comes into. Not that you need like a crazy high turbo, but now we talk about lower can timing basically is your base setting for your ESC. So like if you take your can timing and you set it to 5, you can turn your boost and turbo all the way up to max. I saw a question about a 13.5, 10.5. I'll get on that in a second. But like if you turn your timing all the way down to like 5, and then you turn your boost timing, say all the way to 64, you probably still don't have enough boost because the motor can timing is the limiting factor. So these are the operating windows that you have to play with. You have to get the motor into its base can timing. I use that to figure out like my base brush zone. And then I use my lower boost setting to basically work my third and fourth gear throttle, basically RPM to accelerate, to give me the speed as I pick up on corner exit. And then the turbo is just there for if I need to initiate at like really higher RPMs, aka the straights, if I need to turbo brake, if I
Slow
need
down
to,
a little bit,
yeah. So what it does is it moves the turbo into its own separate category, which then again for the driver, you're opening up more driving options.
When you say brush, you're referring to like just swinging out and hitting a zone.
No, I think he's.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Never mind. Go for it.
So when we say in Asia, brush is a very common term, and brushing basically means the point where your car is moving towards the wall. So like you've thrown and you've initiated a slide, and the car is just moving on momentum, whatever momentum you threw the car with. Brushing is basically from the point where that enters onto the wall and then holding on that wall.
Yeah.
So we call that brushing.
Okay. Good to know. That's what I thought. But
right. And so just to address that question on 10.5, 13.5, there is no one size fit all. I've seen there's a car that you'll hear me often reference, which is Matsuzuki Hayato in Japan. His car runs a 13.5, and his car is blitzy quick, like touring car quick, and we don't know how it works. Nobody knows how he has a 13.5 and can do it, because I've tried to mimic the settings in it, and you can't. Me personally, I'm a 10.5 just because when I look at where the RPM ranges line up, a 13.5 doesn't spool up fast enough for me. And that's just because of my style. I'm running very low boost, and I'm using FDR to multiply it. If I apply the same to a 13.5, I need to even run a lower FDR. And going below a 5.5 is just really not possible on a lot of cars just because of the spur and pinion gear combinations. What are you running, Adam? 10.5, 13.5?
Which one?
Which one?
Both. Adam and Dr. H.
Other Adam? Sorry. Host Adam, you can prefer.
I run a 10.5. I've run all sorts of motors, anywhere from like an 8.5, 10.5, 13.5. Not as many 13.5s, but I've run 15.5 and 17.5. Like all that kind of gamut. And that spreads from like old race motors from like Phantom Racing that like actually make really, really good drift motors. But every single time I go back to a 10.5, like I'll put a different motor in a car and then come back to a 10.5. It always feels like home to me, just because of style, just because of like where I like that finger pull at.
I've kind of talked about that before, but like I think like your first 6 months to a year of RC drift are much like it's like a developmental time for you, and you like there might be some like scientific medical thing for this, but I think you just kind of develop like a certain style or presence of what you like, the way you like things to feel, and it's hard to stray from that after that time period.
Because you know what you like.
I think
the habituation.
Well,
yeah.
it's again, it's all capsulated in experience. So like going back to like last year, I started the year with a certain tune. As I passed through our first season opener, which is around this time, March area for Thailand, that changed. So being exposed to Lux, Ryu, and Put, and then seeing what they were doing, it was like, huh, okay. And then further that, when we got into September for Japan LTDC, that's when we first encountered the burn tune, and it was like, it was allowed, and if you didn't have it, you were just out of luck. You were bringing a knife to a gunfight, and so that exposure then caused another
AKA Worlds.
Huh?
I said AKA Worlds.
Well, yeah. Then we'll fast forward from that LTDC. The next event for us was Super G, and Super G, we brought that burn tune into Super G. That's the reason why when we were doing the driver's briefing, I asked that question to Shane. I was like, "Are we allowing low FDR? Are we allowing burn tunes?" And said yes. And we used it to a very good degree. So like a little trick, like on Put's car, his car was actually detuned because we made it too fast. My car was kept fast because I was in the lower bracket already with Toxie and Rio. So it's kind of like there's no need for Put to have that build up an extra speed, because all it's going to do is it's going to increase the chance of a contact because the car is just too quick or can build up that speed. So his was running a slightly abbreviated version of that. My car, however, my thought process was like, if I manage to match up against Toxie or Ryu, I want that speed. But eventually that's what took me out, because that little build-up in speed caused me to poke the car in front of me.
I think so, that just kind of, to me, that speaks way more to what Rio did, because like of how he was like, you know, coming through the whole brackets, he's having to drive against cars that are just way slower the whole time. And to have not made a mistake and go all the way, it's pretty crazy.
On the Rio thing? Oh, sorry.
On Rio's thing, but sorry. Just quick question on comment on Rio. I can't prove it because I didn't see the car. I highly suspect that he also detuned his car from Saturday to Sunday, because on Saturday, although there were slower cars, there were cars like Vittorio was in that group. There were some quicker drivers that he did face, and even then I saw him. His car he had to really drive within a window, and then when you get over to Sunday, his car was much more comfortable looking.
Yeah.
So I suspect there was a couple of dialing or fine tuning for the actual field itself.
Absolutely.
I think we need more Uncle Ben quotes here. What were you gonna say, Adam?
I think the thing that's most impressive about Rio's run is the run itself, because I think we can all kind of like look at one lap that he did and go, oh, I could do that. Oh, I could do that. I could do that. Oh, I have a film of me doing one lap. Because we can, I think once you get to a point, we can all do at least one of those laps.
Yeah.
The thing about it, the thing that like the kind of itched my brain was that, like you were saying, it was against completely different people from different regions with different speeds, different setups, different angle, whatever, and it was just consistent.
I mean,
I think, that's the thing that like stuck with me. Yeah.
In our region, I lost several times, just like trying to drive behind people that, maybe were newer or just we didn't expect to finish highly in the competition, right? Like I lost several times just by not being cautious enough in the chase when I'm behind someone who is just not as experienced as I am, which I have no experience, but they're, we're talking like people who have been driving for a few weeks. I lost because I ran into them because I just wasn't ready for that. So driving behind people that are at different skill levels than you is just as much, challenge as it can. It's almost easier to drive behind really, really good drivers sometimes. You know what I mean?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh, that's gonna break up the open the discussion on judging.
I mean, speaking of
Just
judging,
to wrap up. Wait, before we jump up, just to wrap up on the whole burn tune. So I guess the emphasis of that is burn tune is the side effect of having that low FDR, in the sense that all I need to do to activate the burn tune is to basically up my turbo. If I just down my turbo into a normal operating window, the car doesn't burn. So I don't want people to get the idea that low FDR equals burn tune.
No.
Low FDR can be burn tune.
It's part of it.
But that's part of it,
Yes.
but it's probably not the intended purpose.
So there's a lot of factors you need to create a situation where you're melting plastic. Is, one of those inputs can be wheel speed, but there's also weight to factor in, and even like you said, the oblong tires, like if you have some really soft tires, it's going to be a little easier to get that going. Or if you have just like people are going to be like standing on their tires before they install them, or their wheels now. But the other point is it's kind of irrelevant for all of us here because it's kind of basically outlawed. I mean, so that's interesting. I think it's probably the right move for us. What's that?
So the question then becomes, and those that have experimented with it, there is again, it depends on the tire. If a tire is heat sensitive, and the best way you can tell it, like if you take like an LF3 and you just start driving it, like a broken in LF3, but you just start driving it, when the way the car feels from say minute 1 to minute 3 feels different between minute 8 and minute 10.
Yeah.
And so there is an aspect of I can generate heat in my tire still without melting the tire. And then I think it will be the harder point to draw a line, whether or not does this cross the line into a burn tune, or am I just warming up the tires into a better operating window?
I like that point, because I think the point that you're trying to make is that it's fairly easy actually to just get to a point where you're melting the tire, but it's a lot harder to get right to before the point where you're melting the tire and be higher than everybody else, right? It's fairly straightforward to just melt the tire, but to get it as hot as possible without melting it is a little harder.
Hashtag tire warmers 2025.
I think Sky RC makes those, don't they?
I mean, they're for drag cars. There's for touring cars. They already make them.
Are there rules about that?
Kind of a buggy.
I think technically that falls under like you can't modify the tire, or you can't alter the tire.
Oh boy. Okay. You guys, I don't want to talk about judging, but there was a good conversation on Facebook that happened like this past week, and the discussion went as a Facebook group, right? That was made up of like a single judge from each of the regions, right? Totally 100%. I'm behind that all day long.
For sure. That's a great idea. Because that only stands to help everyone that's driving not in California, right? Because it's kind of, that region is basically, the SoCal region is basically, they're responsible for, they're going to create all the rules. The judging is what you're going to see at Worlds for the most part. I know they will change it up, but that's going to be all the people that are competing in SoCal. I'll say it legit have an advantage, right? Because, well, one, obviously they're in the arena that the Worlds event is going to be at, but two, it's the same judges, it's the people that made the rule set. So all these other regions that are out in the middle of nowhere, a lot of times smaller regions that have judges that may not have been even judging very long, if not it's their first year. You know what I mean? So I think that's excellent to have like a group, a dedicated group for regional judges to be able to speak with Shane. Not that these judges are like unreachable anyways. I mean, I talk to Shane all the time about rules, but just have one place where everyone can kind of communicate and get on the same page is excellent idea, in my opinion.
Kevin, wasn't it you that like said last year that like there's basically a certification that judges have to go through for like EDC or something like that?
Well, I don't know if it's still in play. I heard, but like I know RCDC used to have a judging certification and judging course.
Yeah.
And it was a way to keep all the ladder series and all the judging in the Japan regions like base on par. The judging is a little different than US style. Not to say one is different than the other, like there are different, basically there's a different look and a different feel. And I'll always say, whatever the judges ask for, that's what you have to tune your car for. So if I'm running like a really high, like if I'm running a flow track, for instance, and I don't have any straights or technicals and that stuff like that, that's up to me to tune my car for that and not try to, have the judge or coerce that event to be like, oh no, you must judge or you must drive like this, et cetera, et cetera. And it happens too, even from like you take a skilled driver like Ryu, who is Thailand based, but he comes more under the Japanese side. So sometimes there's frustration when the judging doesn't go the way that we think it is. But we always have to remember, we must always respect our judges, and we must always, drive within that particular competition. The only thing I caution, and I hope it doesn't happen, I'm totally for the Facebook. What I don't want, or I hope what we don't see is like people start just posting runs and judgings and be like, what do you think about this?
Yeah.
What do you think?
No,
that's
I think first of all, the group should just be judges only, and Super G already does this where they will not. Because I've tried it myself. They will, if you send them a clip, they won't say anything about it because it's not. They understand that it's really not their place to decide what your judges should have done. They're pretty hard and fast with that. Like you can't send a email clip to somebody at Super G and they're not gonna give you a decision on it because that's obviously that's pretty toxic, honestly. So yeah, they're good about that.
I think David Tuggle here in chat was the originator of that post, which yeah,
he was, yeah,
all for it. So I'm just gonna start showing pictures of chassis and roast by rig. You guys can kind of talk about whatever you need to. Because it is 9:00 and I don't want to go too much longer than that. We've had an awesome stream, by the way, so thank you guys. Yeah, thank you guys for hanging out. It's been super fun. If you have questions, post them now because we want to answer them.
All right, we'll go scroll back through some of these. We talked about the 10.5. What is FDR 10.5? Yeah, so somebody asked what the FDR I was referencing. That's on I run a 10.5. Actually, I run an 8.5 too. If anybody wants a really fun training scenario, run an 8.5 motor on a slippery surface. Do it for like a week or two, and then go back to your normal setup, and your finger will feel absolutely amazing.
It's like the baseball bat weights, right? Like,
yeah, it's. I got the 8.5 from Kosei, and when he showed me his car, and I remember he like please drive my car, and I drove his car, and I swear I could not get his car to go more than like 10 feet without spinning, like it was like an atom bomb underneath the trigger every time. And then you slowly realize, okay, you have to kind of like coax and you have to like pulse the throttle, and then it goes back to like when I hear him drive his car, like he's always feathering it. But the difference is that I can press the throttle 3 times for every time that he's doing like 6. And so
look at Steve, doing his no gyro drifting stuff. I mean, I couldn't imagine being able to do that, and he's like getting around the track. That's crazy. I bet driving a full gyro car is like boring for him now.
No, no.
Here's an interesting question. If your mechanical tune is better, or not say better, more balanced and more suited to your driving style, does your gyro gain go down?
I have a car that's sitting at like 20 to 30% gyro gain right now, and it feels great. But I wouldn't say that it's more preferred to my style than not.
Well, just I think I mean,
I guess let me phrase it differently. If the car is naturally mechanically balanced, does it mean that you don't rely on the gyro as much, aka your gyro gain is
less,
lower?
Yeah. I
if
think
the
so.
car is like really free and the self-correction in the steering is really free and unimpeded, I would say, like there's not forces resisting the steering from self-centering, then I mean it's gonna be you're gonna be able to use less gain. I mean that's the biggest thing, right? Is our differences. For me, my vision of why we need a gyro is because in a real car, when you're counter steering and you're ready to transition, you can kind of add a little bit of lock and then let go, and then the car will just figure the rest of it out, and then you just grab the wheel again and catch it. Whereas on an RC, we're using a spring centering wheel that if you let it go, your wheels are just going to start going crazy, right? So like you can't just like, now that this is what I've kind of thought about this. What I would love to see in this sport is a force feedback transmitter that basically has a motor in the transmitter that basically it's like a Seto at that point, right?
I would dig
That
it.
would be interesting.
Logan wants a transmitter this big to have enough force to
Yeah, I mean, you got a little wheel, so it could be a little motor, but something that basically simulates the actual steering force, right, back into your hand. That would be fun. And then I could really see no gyro with that for sure.
One thing I want to throw in at this picture, Josh, this is an amazing build. I think if this was like a burnt blue titanium, like the burnt titanium effect, that would be sick.
Heat it up a little bit.
Yeah.
Josh is phenomenal, man.
Yeah, he is. Sorry, just need to put that in there. Other than that, there's nothing really to roast about this.
So, Christian is on it too. Like if we could have force feedback steering and then some kind of way to do left foot braking that actually works. Oh my God.
So what you're really saying, Logan, is you just really want to have a sim setup for it.
Yeah.
But by that time, we're just driving a Seto, right?
It'd be cool if I had a sim that I actually drove.
I mean, there are YouTube videos of that stuff happening.
Michael, don't open. So everybody loves to talk about. So if those that don't know, I was like real heavy into the FPV world before I got into RC.
Mm-hmm. Hence your YouTube name, right?
Well, I changed it now, so now it says RCO, so now it's not confusing everybody. But the difference is that what I think a lot of people don't realize, like if you scale down and you put an FP rig on a drift car, your track isn't set up with all the identifiers and everything to be actually able to drive it well.
Yeah.
Because we look at it from third person standing up, and therefore we can't. But if you bring yourself down to like the car level and you actually had to like look for something as a reference marker, it doesn't exist.
It's gone. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember back at it was Hot Import Nights one year. I had a YD2 Plus and I had a Fat Shark setup with like head tracking. I just couldn't get it to work how I wanted it. But I bet you if I revisit that idea today, it might work out, but I don't want to go through that hassle again.
We'll just talk to Mark. I mean, Mark's doing that all day.
That, yeah. Through that. Look at this detail shot right here. That's epic.
Pretty impressive. I've never used a dash before.
He needs the like a sticker.
I can't even paint.
I wonder if the dash works, because I know that like Mark makes a workable dash.
Right.
Okay. I think we're actually near. Nope. Quite a few more pictures to go. Here, you guys. Okay. Kevin, Adam, please roast this to your heart's content, because this is one of our homeboys at PDX.
Whose is that?
Chris.
Oh. Chris bought that one from Chris.
Which Chris? I know old man Chris, but what
Wait.
Chris did you buy it from?
He bought it. I thought old man Chris bought his Calm from Chris Reese.
This is not a Galm.
It's
Oh, it's a
RER.
D-like. My bad. Oh, my brain.
Oh,
So they've all been buying D-likes for like the last 6 months or 4 months, but now they're all buying Galms, and Chris just bought a Galm. So I'm like, my brain's all messed up. My bad. Yeah, no, there's a lot of D-likes in our squad now too.
Except no one runs outside.
I mean, it's winter.
I mean, Elliot runs outside. Oh, my bad.
Elliot runs outside in the rain. He doesn't care.
Hey, I got some sick shots of Elliot outside the other day. I was proud. I was also using my new camera because my old one broke.
Junior says same thing.
So these Merlins, has anybody seen one of these run?
Yeah, I've driven.
Yeah, we have 2 of them at our track.
One
How are
drives
they?
great. One, not so much.
I've not driven them that much. Both owners seem to really like them. The one thing that we have noticed is that there's a bit of an issue. Like, you need to do a nut and bolt check on that thing when you get it.
Mhm.
Uh-huh.
But other than that, I think they're both pretty happy with them.
Like, Judd's drives so neutral. Like, you can throw that thing anywhere. Like, absolutely anywhere, and it'll just stick and hold on.
It just takes it. Yeah, it just takes whatever you dish at it. Which, yeah, I mean, it's pretty nice.
I'm not sure what Chris's problem was, other than things falling off and it just not driving right.
Yeah, I think he liked it, and then things messed up, and then he messed it up, and then I don't know. But for me, the Merlin goes back to the theory that I shared earlier, right? Keep it simple, stupid, and the Merlin is not simple.
Yeah, it's like everything not. Oh,
It's an interesting design concept for sure. I've been curious to get my hands on one, just because I there's a part of me that just wants to tinker with it endlessly, and then there's the other part of me that just thinks like, oh, you're down a rabbit hole.
I was like when we first got back from Worlds, I was like kind of curious about like what the whole point was, and it seems to be like the whole decoupled suspension thing, and the general conception or perception is that it's not truly a decoupled suspension, but that term is like kind of I would almost call it like the holy grail of like automotive engineering is like fully decoupled suspension, but I think in reality it just becomes too complicated to actually make. But it's a version of that, and so I see where they're coming from, but I don't know. It's too much for me. I don't even I barely just understood how a big bore has rebound like without a spring. I barely just had a physical conception of that, so I can't begin to imagine what how you're tuning a car with 2 shocks on it.
yeah,
Definitely.
Some Macklin.
McLaren, man.
Oh, is that how you say it?
Supposedly.
So I gotta ask you guys, and I'm asking Adam because Adam is the first instance of myself seeing these springs. What is it about barrel springs that is just taking over the drift community?
Okay. So for
Oh.
me, it was because the HRC spring set that I had were 1.5 mil thick, and they went up to an 8 turn, and they were too soft. So I was just looking for shorter 1.5 diameter wire that was 6 turns. The only thing that had that were the barrels. So they're 27 mil, which means that I can run. So I increase the preload until the I'll just tell you
to
until the
basically
car
seat the spring, right?
literally
Yeah.
exactly, and then all that it does from there is just hold the car up.
Yeah.
And then so I don't think they're like magic. They just like had the measurables
Specs
that I
you were
wanted.
looking for.
Yeah, exactly. So
And are you on like the version 1 or the version 2?
the version 2, just because my car's heavy.
Yeah. And then, do you have any like inherent rebound in your dampers?
So the way that I build my nerds, so these are 20 weight oil or 20 whatever OD oil, and then I go all the way down on the nerd, so it's basically no rebound. I'm just running these so they hold the car up.
Yeah.
It was just
I think
the
that
issue with that.
Knowing what I know about yourself, that like they do what you want them to do.
That's all that they need to do.
But it's just been funny because I feel like it's been kind of like a super hype product the last few weeks of like, oh yeah, everybody's buying barrel springs.
I think something that I'll go on my soapbox for is that shorter springs and therefore less shock movement is kind of a nice thing when we're on a flat surface where we're not like buggies where we need massive droop. It's just like my car has 0 droop.
It's kind of funny.
Crazy.
I was just in a deep conversation with Chat GPT about why we would need much suspension at all on so a PDX. It's a P-tile track. It's extremely flat and smooth. There's maybe one place on the whole track where I can even think of I actually feel or see a bump. So in my mind, it's essentially like a perfectly flat, smooth plane. It's like, okay, well then at that point, what do we need suspension for? And it handles weight transfer and stuff, but it's kind of just like it's just like I'm with you. Like we're really not asking much of our suspension because the tires are always on the ground.
Yeah. Exactly. It's something that I've actually I've gone on to eliminate. I have no front droop. I have very minimal rear droop. I look at the setups of, all these guys from Japan. So like Takumi, both when he was on Top Line and his GRK, Hayato in his GRK, Hikaru with his RDX. It's like the way that they set these cars up is that you can see in their design language is like the shorter springs, stiffer springs, and then what they call their bonsai camber link. So a lot of camber gain, but because the car is so low, they don't really change camber very much, and you can see how fast they take off. So it's I think that we've run 32 mil very soft springs for so long that we kind of just call them the standard, when this is something that has been moved on from in basically every other region in the world. So
So I'll add to Adam's on the right track, where that's the same direction that I've been going with all the setups. The reason why the bonsai link exists is because when you switch to such a high spring, your roll is less. So therefore, I need my camber to compensate for that less amount of roll.
Yep.
But that less amount of roll is also the reason why you see a lot of all my cars now, they're low motor setups. And it's because if I'm running a flow track, high motor can definitely work, because I need to connect one corner to another. But on a D1 GP style track where I got to get that car straight and moving and getting speed, I need that drift to end. So I need that roll center down. I need that car to snap straight and start picking up speed ASAP.
I'm just kind of picking up on one thing that you said. the length of your spring combined with your preload is like the key factor there being the point at which the height from the ground that your suspension picks up the top of the spring has a huge effect on how much your chassis is going to want to roll.
Yeah, it's like so it's like dynamic range. When like the way that I run my nerds, I actually have threaded M3 spacers that I use to specifically get the length of the nerd to be as short as possible, where I'm still holding the car up with the springs that I have.
Yeah. But if you had a longer spring,
yeah,
same rate but longer, the point where your damper actually picks up the top of the spring would be higher, and therefore the whole chassis would be more resistant to roll. No?
In that scenario, if you're not changing the preload, spring rate is spring rate. So your K value is the same, so that shouldn't change.
That's what I mean though. Like you're switching to say you have a 27 millimeter spring, the preload is set just so that it basically
seats like
closes down the height of the spring, right? Then you switch to a taller spring and you adjust the preload accordingly to where it does the same thing. It hits the top of the spring. So now the point where your suspension is actually picking up the top of the spring is actually higher off the ground. Does that have an effect?
Not in the sense of if the springs have the same spring rate, it shouldn't have an effect in that component. Where it'll have an effect is in the droop aspect, because that will obviously change. So again, coming out of like RCDC, we noticed like all of the Japanese drivers run very little to no droop on the front. And there was a lot of speculation that we had about that increasing like the front grip or, changing the dynamic on the front. So we did a lot of testing when we got back from that. And I think it really boils down to, if you're running like the short spring already and your car is basically set at the right height. So basically the short spring just means that you have a lot of like spring gap. And then when you actually set the right height properly, it's like Adam said, it's just resting on it. It really can't lift beyond that point. So if your droop, doesn't matter that your droop is capable of way more. If your spring length doesn't let you go, it really can't do a lot more. And I think it's more for a look and style component as it is opposed to like it having such like an effect of like keeping the front down or like the front jumping up so much that it actually lifts the wheel off the ground kind of thing. But that is the definite trend that we saw. It's actually like if you actually get into like the nitty gritty from RCDC, looking at the like Hikaru's car versus Hayato's, those are like polar opposites. And it was really interesting to see, like, if the simple one is like if you watch in the battle runs, if you time their lead laps, right? Hikaru and the RDXs are like almost a second faster than the GRKs. However, the GRK in the chase position can still chase. So it just means that the GRK's natural flow and speed is slightly slower. And that makes sense because the style of the RCDC track was more for flow as opposed to having like straights and like straight shoot kind of positions, which I think is where the RDX tends to garner more strength, especially when you start tacking like sway bars on the car.
I like the point that you made about going back after the fact and looking at lap times of a battle, because I do that myself, and I think everyone gets so caught up in speed that they forget about drivability sometimes.
Yeah, that is again. I think that gets back to so I'll just use this from our community, so that way we don't open too much a can of worms. When we talk about like judging, right? In our community, it almost feels like, people forget that the job of the lead car is to run a perfect lap. It's not a race. The job is not to run away from the chase car. It's to run a perfect lap and see what the chase car can do given that condition. And then that leads into a lot of discussions about judging and being able to judge the effect of a lead lap versus the chase. So a chase may look exceptionally good, but is it because you were given a good lead lap? And that's where, you know, the difference in styles and the difference in like how judging is done. I think there's room to be explored on both sides. I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, I think you can have situations where two cars run, you know, as far as angle and line go at the exact same lap, but you're going to have two different lap times. In that sense, it's better to be the person with the faster lap time because you're running the same line and the same angle at all points, right? So in that sense, it's better because it's hard. It's going to be harder for the person behind you to chase you. But at the same time, like if you can't control the car being that fast and you do worse line or worse angle, then it's kind of a moot point. It's like, well, what's the point of being faster if you can't even control the car doing that? So I think with a lot of us can be an issue of like, we can make our cars faster, but then it's like, can you actually drive it good to the level that you need to? Makes it a little harder.
It's definitely something that we all kind of like, in my travels, you see the different, like I would call face of what the driving community is. Like when we went to Japan in September, it was very quickly realized we were outgunned. Like we were, I'm not talking just like me and Benzie, like our number one driver, Lux, he was like, this is the first time I've ever seen him like nervous or scared going into competition. Normally he's like, I got it, we're locked in. And he worked his butt off and he managed like a 14th place in qualifying. It was just, you were just in another field and it was just like, okay, we've got to soak in so much information. We got to change so much to be able to be up to speed with that particular scene or that community.
Mm-hmm. Having traveled the small amount that I have, I've been to a few different tracks. I've been to like, you know, Phoenix and LA and Sacramento, Tandem, Super G, Rolling Garage. The people in a certain location kind of rise to what is the fastest car at that location, right? Because they don't really have necessity to go beyond that. But then when you're talking about different states, it's just like there's going to be one person at a different level, and those people are going to rise to that level. And it's just like everywhere you go across the country, you just the people here don't have the necessity to be any faster because they feel like they're at the peak, because there is such a thing as too fast, right? So, but then, yeah, that's what you get is different, you know, you go somewhere miles and miles away and the speed level that they're at is a little bit different than what you're used to.
So what Logan is saying is that we need to like export him out of the country.
Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'm not even worried about being, I mean, I don't think my car is particularly fast in our group of people. And when you were talking about measuring lead lap times, I've done that. So in Oregon last year, and I'm not even trying to say anything here about myself, but I won 2 rounds of that. And both times I won, my lead lap was a little bit slower than Jake's, which is who I battled. So I was just curious. I was like, you know, that made me think about like speed in a sense. Like, if my car was a little bit faster, would I have been as good at controlling it, you know, and putting it right in the zones where I needed to be? And I was still able to keep up with them. You know, there's still sacrifices you can make in the chase to keep up with someone who's leading faster than you. I thought it was interesting. I think it's something that people should do. You know, if you're battling, something to look at is, especially if you have video of it, it's super easy. Like compare the lead times in the battle.
Yeah, definitely. In this adventure and this journey of RC Drift, it's the more you experience, the more you experience, the better your kaleidoscope looks.
Absolutely.
The more colorful, the more, you know, understanding, the more options. Like switching back between like Asia and the US scene, like there's definitely certain things, certain tunes, certain things that I would use in each particular region. It's not to say that one is better than the other. It's if you have that understanding and you know how to use it, then edge up on you. Good.
Right on. Sorry, guys. I think it's time to like cut it.
But we're having so much on, Adam.
I know.
We are.
So this is kind of exactly what I knew would happen. Is when you have people that are passionate, the combo happens. And Adam, Dr. H, and I have many hours of conversation like this. We must be close to the, I don't know, 50, 60 hour mark of just like staying up way too late before an event and talking. But yeah,
I'm watching RCDC. Yeah.
good time. Yeah.
So, Adam H, Dr. H, which is your next comp?
So I'm going to compete Saturday. So that's going to be STC round 1 in SoCal. So, yeah, my first time back in SoCal since Worlds. I mean, obviously, but I'm excited. So I registered in Las Vegas because I wanted to. So I actually initially wanted to only compete in SoCal and then judge in Las Vegas, but since the judging criteria changed to qualify for finals, and I didn't know I can't guarantee if I would have made 50% or gotten top 3 in SoCal. I actually registered in Vegas, did the first round, finished 3rd. Now I'm done. So I'll be judging out there, and then I'll be competing in SoCal. So yeah, a little convoluted, but
what does that say about the Vegas region that you're like, I don't know if I'll ever make the podium?
Oh, so I'm talking about SoCal. So I actually didn't know if I was going to make SoCal, but I was like, maybe, hopefully, I can make Vegas. But Vegas is. So I'll put it in reference in context here. So of the 16 total prize positions, so this is TQ 1st through 3rd, of the 4 times that they've held regionals, so that's total of 16 positions. 5 were filled by Vegas. So 35% of the podium or TQ have been people from Las Vegas, and this is for the SoCal region.
Yeah.
So just curious, each region, like World SDC, there's a certain number of spots for each region. Does it vary based on the size of the region?
Nope. There's no skill requirement either. Like if you just participate, you're in. And there's no requirement. There's a certain number of events that your region has to run, but and there's a certain number of events that you have to compete in, but you're just in.
Yep.
And
Gotcha.
And it's obviously it's also heavily weighted towards people in California. Like when you go to Worlds, you're not going to see most of the regions represented very well because people just can't afford to travel or whatever it is.
So if anybody's curious about any of the statistics from finals, I actually did a full statistical breakdown it's posted in the general of the Northwest PDX Discord.
Yep.
Yeah.
Right next to my pictures. So I have a spreadsheet with everybody's score, with median, mean, and mode, and standard deviation for each of the qualifying groups, and then an overall. And then I have a whole document section where it's just kind of like breaking down. I did a couple other statistical analyses, but this is all to say, my little breakdown here is that when you register as an actual empirical statistical strength in how well you score. Case in point is actually
early or late.
So you actually read it if it's in the document.
I'll read it.
If you feel like you can throw down a lap anytime, you're a great cold driver, you're consistent, you'd never hit walls, whatever, go first. Because if you look at the breakdown of what groups sent the most people, it was the people who had, so in our group, in the first group, we had 4 regional champions, 4 regional second place, 3 regional seconds.
That was when you knew, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was a bloodbath. And you can actually see it. The standard, like the average score was a 68 compared to the whole average of the entire competition was a 60. So it was like a whole standard deviation higher than any other group, other than the group that had the super, like the Team Super G, Team Overdose.
Yeah.
And
I'm just looking for you to tell me that my score was lower than it should have been. And
You know, I won't go that.
Let's find
far,
the stats that fit my narrative, please.
but it's like it was objectively harder to stand out in a group that had more stacked drivers.
Okay.
Because you would have assumed
You're just
like,
telling me that I need to drive better. I got it.
no, I'm telling you to register later, dude.
So
That's what I'm gonna
should
do.
just
I'm
wait
gonna wait
next
till like the last day, dude.
I was treating that shit like a race, though. Like,
Oh yeah, no, I was talking with Chuck, and he's like, yeah, I'm gonna build like a code so that I can be the first one in. I was like,
Yeah.
dude, you're crazy. And yeah, I'm like, I think I got 5th, and I was like on there. My partner was like sitting next to me. She's like, why do you have like your credit card out at like 10 p.m.? Like, why does this look like a Supreme drop or something? I'm like, I gotta be first.
we were all there. That was all us. Because I'm like, what, 2 spots after you or something?
Yeah, I think it was like Brett, and then a few guys like Chuck. I know Charlie was in there, and then it was me, and then like Jake, you. It was like we were all just like, you could see the people who were all like neurotic and like had to be on there as fast as possible.
And that was not the move.
That was the move if went well.
I wish I could see the list of people that have signed up, so I could just wait and like space myself out a little bit.
See, that's the Russian roulette of it. It's like,
So, am I understanding correctly? Like the slot or the time that you register has some play in. So you're talking about like qualifying, or
Yeah. So the order that you sign up in is basically becomes your driver number,
okay,
which then is that's your driver number for the whole event. So when they do groups for qualifying, it's gonna be they'll pick a random number. So say 100 and how many people signed up for the event?
like 160 something.
160 people sign up for the event. Then to start qualifying, they'll basically pick a random number. That person is the first qualifier. And then so everyone 32 spaces or however big the groups were, they were like 16.
I think 24, and then the last group was 18. I think.
Yeah, so whatever number they draw, the 24 people behind them is who's in their group, and then the next group starts, and so on and so forth. So basically, the group of people that you qualify with is decided based on when you signed up. So I signed up right at the beginning, so did Adam, and so I was in with Adam and Brett and Miko and Jake and all that. I think it should just be straight full random.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, I would agree.
And so, Dr. H's dissertation on registration. If you feel you're a peaky driver who tends to be less consistent during qualifying, do not register early.
I didn't forget you, Dow. I can't name 24 people.
This is interesting. So this is all just based off of last SDC, right?
Correct. This is all just finals, yeah.
Shark remains at the top. A whopping 16 of 31 drivers, 51.6%, had at least a Shark DDSS on their car, with 13 running full Sharks. 4 RDXs, 3 GOMs, 2 MD2s.
I'm interested in seeing the region breakdown, like California versus, I think Texas was like probably the second best region.
Well, he has a breakdown of the the top 31.
While you search for that, Adam, what was the most prominent chassis at SDC? I'm curious because I know what it was at World TDC and RCDC.
By and large, Sharks. By factor of 4 Sharks.
Yeah,
really,
easily. Because you can buy a front Shark and put it on almost anything, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so they're not necessarily like Sharks, like full Sharks, but like just
no. I mean, almost nobody runs the actual full Shark chassis.
Adam poking through something. Okay.
Yeah.
So like I
So
think it
almost nobody
was
runs the actual full Shark chassis. Bare minimum, people will have the Shark front end and transmission on like some aftermarket deck, but then a lot of people also just do like Adam SD something or RD something with Shark front end.
okay. That's
But
very, very
is that what's
interesting.
actually qualifying as Shark, or is it front and rear that's qualifying?
Yeah, who knows?
So I basically broke them down into two things where it's like at least 50%. So it's like they're at least running a DDSS or whatever, and then 13 running full Sharks, like full transmission.
Yeah, I just read it. Jeez.
But almost nobody runs the actual Shark deck, right?
I didn't see anything specific to that because there wasn't like it just like, oh, you run a Shark, oh, they run a Shark, oh, they run a Shark. So a Hydra, a Kansai, a whatever deck that you were running, they just called it a Shark. I was just different because I was running a DDSS and SD the same way that Junior. So you can actually see the three people who don't have the rear end are Junior, Justin, and I, who run the DDSS up front but don't run Shark rear.
So the breakdown of the top 31 would basically coincide with Logan's point.
Oh yeah,
35.5% is the top of that top 31 from SoCal.
So
Interesting. Very interesting.
I like college sports. So there's a thing in college sports called the Power 5, or now the Power 4 because rip the Pac-12. But it's the idea that the most of the talent, I wouldn't say necessarily talent, but like the most competitive football, the most competitive basketball is played within the top conferences. So I basically took that and said, hey, that's actually why they're highlighted red. So if you had multiple qualifiers in top 31, I consider that a power region. And I actually talked to a few other drivers, so a few people who have actually driven out of state and have competed, and their ratings are actually very similar to the statistical, like to the data that I gleaned here and actually put on here. So it's interesting how both the people, like the feeling, the aspect of I feel like this region is more competitive than this region, or I feel like it's harder to get where I want here or win battles here, and it actually coincides with the breakdown that I listed. And then you can actually see a lot more if you want to do your own statistical analysis on the data. If you need the Excel file, hit me up. but I just think it's interesting because I know that Logan talks a lot about like how it's different from region to region, and how he talks a lot about how competing in SoCal is so difficult, and this like really puts an objective number to it that 36%, 35.5% of the people who are competing at the highest point in what we call the apex of US RC drifting, it's coming from one region. Now that could be for numerous reasons. It could be because it's in Southern California. It could be because they're at the same track. It could be for any number of reasons, but this is what we have, the breakdown.
Look at how many regions aren't even on that list.
Ooh, that's my algorithm. That's data. Yeah.
I was gonna say I'm gonna fail this test for statistical analysis.
Yeah,
you're gonna have a ton of regions that aren't even gonna have anyone show up. You're gonna have regions that are like RC Drift is so accessible in Southern California, right? Because there's the biggest store in the United States. There's multiple tracks. So it's just so easy to be into RC Drift in SoCal. But, you got guys in Ohio, in freaking Oklahoma, even Washington. You think like Seattle's like a huge city. And obviously, we have a lot of great drivers out there. They don't have a dedicated track even. And for them to even put a region together is like, they're driving in parking garages and random warehouses and stuff like that. So it's just, I don't even know what my point really is here. Just that, like, yeah, it's tough. It's tough to call it like a. Some regions are very strong, and some are just struggling to even have a place to drive.
Yep. Hey,
And,
I think
man,
you're going to a kind of what I was alluding to is it the accessibility and the maturity of that particular region? Maturity not necessarily being like maturity in like the drivers, but the actual support structure,
yes,
the
yeah.
tracks.
How long
floor,
they've been doing it out there? Yeah, absolutely.
hey,
Yeah,
Dr.
Superdu's
H,
been around for a long time.
did you go as far
Yeah.
as collecting brand name radios for your
I did
study?
not. So this was something that it makes it a little more difficult because I can't, just find it on Super G's website or on their stream or something. So this is something that like I would have to go ask people. This is actually something that I'm the person who's compiling all this data. I would actually like to see that. I would love to go through it. It's just a question of like during registration, if people put, hey, I drive with a Futaba system, or I have an Accuvan CSC or a Yokomo Servo,
So what you're really
the more
saying
data.
is that during SDC we need to have a Dr. H survey, like
Oh yeah.
just go around.
Oh, I'd love to.
So someone needs to go around with
I'd
a
love
tablet.
Dude, I don't know if you guys have seen it, but I was in like the Facebook group, like asking, like, how big is your
Yeah.
top your bracket? And if you can
You know,
see
I saw that.
that's actually why I made the breakdown the way that I did, the algorithm. So my goal is to have an ELO system like what the UK has, but
Yeah,
it's hard.
yeah.
We don't even have like Vegas is a huge region, or relatively. We have a lot of representation. We have no streaming, so if you want to watch our comps,
You can't.
Too
So
bad.
that's two things, right? One, the streaming aspect like is huge. Being able to stream your comps is a big deal because it just opens up people outside of your region to seeing you drive. But two, we're calling Las Vegas a big region, and we're like barely filling out a 32 person comp.
I don't think we've ever had a 32 person
Yeah.
full 32 person
And
bracket.
same here in Oregon, we've never had a 32. I don't think we've had a 32 person comp, Adam.
Not in this generation.
Yeah. So the amount of there's probably only 1 or 2, 3, maybe there's less than 5 regions that are even filling out a 32 person comp.
I mean, hold on.
I don't.
Whereas in California, in SoCal, you're gonna be,
I think we're
least
gonna go 60
64.
deep. We're gonna go 60 deep in this next comp. At least I
Yeah.
assume so.
Just trying to put some of these numbers in perspective, I think.
Hold on.
It's kind of crazy.
You got me
It's
interested
interesting
because
when you just said, Logan, when I look at the US drift map, it would seem if there were less than 32 in a comp, but based upon the number of tracks that I see,
right.
like,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
how are these
Yeah.
tracks staying in business if nobody's driving?
yeah.
or
No,
or
I mean,
is the comp scene just more of a niche
I
community?
think that's a huge
And-
part of it. I think
Yeah.
we obviously, I mean, on a Friday night at PDX, we're gonna have, now in the winter when it's like prime time. What are we counting? I don't know if Jake or somebody's in chat, but somewhere between 20 and 30 people.
Yeah.
And that won't ever be everyone. The amount of times that we get everyone that comes to our track on one day is pretty low. If it doesn't really happen. But I do think there is the reality is, and the same as with IRL, like full size drift, it's just the comping stuff is not for everybody.
so Logan, December 5th, 2023, at Northwest Hobbies, we had 40 entries.
Yeah, where the hell are all those people at?
I mean, that was the time that the Seattle guys came down too.
Yeah. So that's the thing with my big counts on 30. Like when I'm saying 30 people at PDX, that probably includes a bunch of people from Washington too.
And then most of our rounds for SDC never exceeded my highest count that I have, because this was when Judd and I started splitting tasks here. Was 23 on what I have as recorded.
So the question from Kevin of how does this happen? Well, one, reality is it kind of doesn't. Like I said, Seattle does not have a full dedicated track. If they're doing SDC region stuff, they're, like I said, it's kind of freestyle. They just have a group of people that are organizing it, and they're driving wherever they can figure out where to drive. For us at PDX RC Underground, the track that we have now, it was a situation where you have an owner that is basically retired. He's soft retired, I would say, and he has rented the space basically, and his only goal is to pay the bills so that there is a place for people to go and drive. It was never a venture of like trying to make massive profit off of this endeavor. He was just basically keeping a place open. So that's where we get into a little bit of a scary zone right now, which is our new track. Bottom line, it would be nice to pay the bills, but for what it is, realistically, the owner is going to have still a full-time job, and we need to pay the bills and hopefully a little bit extra, a little bit more than that, so that it makes sense for someone to be working full-time and then leaving straight from their day job and going to the track, right? So to answer the question is tough. Like, it's not super easy to actually own a track out here.
Oh yeah, that was one of the topics, huh?
We need to grow. We need to grow in a big way.
I think for G, and you go backtrack before the Hoonigan videos.
Hold on, Kevin. We're not getting all of it.
I know where you're going, Kevin, but you are breaking up a bit, and I'm so glad I'm rocking this koozie today.
Alfredo's got it right. It's gonna be a long night. No. Let's go ahead and end up on this though. Kevin, we'll let you know when you're back.
We're losing Kevin here.
There. Oh, maybe we got you.
Maybe.
We're back. Are we back?
Yeah,
we're back.
Let's try that again.
So you were talking about Hoonigan videos. I think that's a very pivotal moment for RC Drift.
Yeah, so it's kind of like what was Super G before the Hoonigan videos?
Yeah.
Miata shop.
Yeah, that's what I knew it as a Miata shop, and then but how long would like that scene? So I think that when we forget to take things out in perspective, we kind of look at the success of what Super G is now, and then it's like, somebody pitches up a track, and it's like, it takes, as I'm finding out here in Dubai, like it takes probably years, months, if not years, to actually like ignite and initiate a community and to like actually make it self-sustaining.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
the reality is you have to build your market. There are going to be those years where it's just non-existent, essentially.
Well,
we have a little bit of a boost, almost, you could even say, that we have somewhat of a community already.
So on on my Facebook feed, I was getting like pictures of old drift competitions, like from way back when, and it was hilarious because like Black Star Hobbies. Do you remember Black Star Hobbies? I know Logan doesn't. DJ doesn't. Adam, did you know Black Star Hobbies? Kevin?
No, Adam's as new as I am.
Yeah, like Black Star Hobbies was like used to be the place to order your MST stuff.
Of course, Alfredo knows.
Yeah, and then it turned into Falcon Hobbies, and now we have Super G, right? And Fat Lace, yeah. All of those old tracks, old stores.
But that's what's funny is that like the economical mind that I very little on my very small understanding of the economy is right now, like full scale drift is becoming harder and harder to do financially. So I would only expect something like RC to take off a little bit more, but it does not seem to be the case. I don't know, maybe it is.
I mean, from our marketing that what we've seen, like the US scene 2024 for sure, and it's probably going to continue. You guys are the fastest growing sector in terms of by global region. Like the U.S. scene is popping. Because I remember I pulled up
That's good.
the U.S. map. I think in early 2023. Like the number of tracks that you guys have gone up like 50, 70%.
No, that's for sure. I mean, look at Adam and I. We're both Adam H and I. We're both kind of byproducts of that, right? Like we're both very new, relatively. You know, not been around
how long
that
have you been? Curious.
Huh?
When did you start?
2 years ago.
Yeah, March of 2023. February of 2023.
Right,
And
I'm like
Dr. H is not far off of that.
Yeah, I'm about July of 2023.
Man, I wish.
And look at him now. Look at Dr. H go, dude.
Okay, you guys.
All right.
It's time.
All good.
Yeah,
We've burnt the bridge. It's time. You guys
do this.
Thank
This
you.
podcast is supposed to end at 9. By the way.
Thank you for tuning in. It's been great to have you, Kevin. It's been great to have you, Adam.
Hang out, guys, for a little bit so we can debrief.
Yeah, it means
Absolutely.
both of you, Kevin and Adam, don't hang up yet, because of that debriefing, because we like to do that. Good night, you guys. It's been fun. Like, share, subscribe, tell your friends, do a lot of fun stuff. Talk about Drift Mission like it was the good old days, because it was a forum and forums were cool back then. But until next week, we will talk to you later. Bye.
Peace.
Later.